Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. It is, of course, Tuesday the 12th of May. It is D-Day, or shall we say E-Day, as in exit day, for Keir Starmer. It looks as though this morning there's going to be a cabinet meeting at which he is going to be told by Shabana Mahmood, by Yvette Cooper, by Wes Streeting, and possibly by several other members of the cabinet to just get lost. Cheerio. Don't bother giving us a timetable for your departure. Here's a black box. Just put all your stuff in there, or a black bag, and we'll see you later. We think that's what's going to happen. I apologise for coming to you slightly late today. There's a reason for that. Some drama this morning, which I can tell you about shortly, but I'm not going to tell you about just now because there is quite a big story to talk about. Morning, Mike. First super chat of the day, says Loyal. Only 80 MPs put their head above the parapet. And you said the pulpit. What planet do the other 320 live on? Call an election, Starmer. Well, you saw several of them yesterday. Hilary Benn coming out and saying what a fantastic man Keir Starmer is, and this is not the time. Earlier part of the day after Starmer made his crappy speech, we had Lucy Powell coming out and saying, oh, that was a really good speech, that, wasn't it? Absolutely brilliant. Well, no, it wasn't actually. It was one of the worst speeches I think anybody's ever seen any politician make. And the front pages today reflect all of that. We've got the cabinet turns on Starmer. Page 1 of the Times, page 1 of the Daily Mail, Starmer on the brink as cabinet ministers tell him it's time to go. The Sun, Starmer's on the brink. The front page of the Independent, Streeting poised for leadership bid, but the Prime Minister vows to fight on. They're a bit behind the 8 ball. You have been murdered, front page of the Daily Star, which is slightly stark. Starmer mutiny grows with Labour Party is in open revolt against the Prime Minister. Basically, here's what happened. Keir Starmer yesterday gambled that if he made a speech, the speech of his life, as he was trying to tell us everybody it was, that everyone would go, actually, do you know what? He's a really clever man. He's a really smart bloke. And what would we do without him? I mean, after all, look at all the wonderful things he's done for this country. Look at how he's managed to stop the boats and smash the gangs. Look at how he's managed to improve the waiting list times on the NHS. Look at how he's managed to hold the country together and stop it from being divided by different factions, Muslims, Hindus, managed to stop people fighting in the streets. How has he managed to... He stops all the crime, hasn't he? There's no crime anymore because he's put more police on the streets. And also, the thing is, defences. All right, OK, but he's spending more money on defence, so at least you can say what he's done is he has salvaged the reputation of the Royal Navy by putting a load of ships into the Straits of Hormuz to stop the Iranians from bullying the rest of the world. No, hasn't really done that. OK, all right, let's see, what else? The economy, yeah, there we go. He's salvaged the economy. He's managed to get business growing. He's managed to get economic growth. He's managed to get all sorts of people into new jobs, and new businesses are starting up, and there's a fresh wave of enthusiasm for the economy going forward. Not really, no. So at the end of the day, he's a good speaker though, right? He speaks well. He doesn't sound like a robot. He doesn't sound like a Dalek. Shall we have an early Starmer? Oh my God. We were told yesterday, actually, we might have to prepare an exterminate Starmer alert because obviously by the end of today, I fully expect, and I know that I had to pay some money out yesterday to a young woman who shall not be named, Emma Wolf, or it was Emma Wolf, I gave her 10 quid. But I said, look, if he's not here on the 21st of June, which is when she said he would still be here, I want the 10 quid back. And I think I'm going to get it back before the end of the week because it looks to me as though the skids are now definitely under this bozo and we are never going to see him again. Pontman says, best rant ever. Well, let's see. Is there anything I missed, Pooch? Oh, yeah, the poll. This is great. The four most welcome departures in British history. The Romans leaving Britain in 410 AD. The Black Death finishing in 1380. The Spanish Armada sailing off in 1588. This is what I love about Pooch. The historical knowledge he's got. Or could it be Keir Starmer stepping down? So forget about the Black Death, the Spanish Armada and the Romans. Keir Starmer stepping down. 95% of you think it's the most welcome departure in British history. I don't think there has ever been a more hated man in Britain. Forget about politics. I'm talking about in Britain. Because even the world's worst criminals, you know, the great train robbery. Ronnie Biggs, Harold Shipman, the killer doctor. Fred and Rose West. All sorts of horrible things happened in this country over the course of time. And there were many people who did some terrible things. But I've never seen the vitriol pointed at anyone in the way that I've seen it pointed at Keir Starmer. And yesterday was a great example of how bloody awful. Where's that eel thing coming from? An eel, my kingdom for an eel. We had an eel thing last week, do you remember?
You and Edward Hughes did it.
Eels.
Edward Hughes.
Edward Eels. Breakfast Club, says Cliff. Yeah, that's right. We've got breakfast clubs. That's what we've got to... The Starmer legacy will be breakfast clubs. Oh, I have lifted 500,000 children out of poverty. No, you haven't. You've given some kids who've already had something else to eat, and you've made some other people pay for it. Tadstone says possibly Oswald Mosley was more hated. I don't think so. No, I really don't think so. Nobody's been as hated as Keir Starmer. I kid you not. We got Russell Quirk this morning to talk to, of course. He is down the line for us. Very, very good morning to you, Russell.
Good morning. What a time to be alive. What a time to be a commentator. And what a time to be part of a country that should be wholesalely embarrassed by their political class. Seriously.
I don't know. I mean, the great thing about the last sort of 48 hours is that everything Starmer did made it worse. People are just watching last night the kind of the ever rising number of MPs coming forward. It's hit 51. Oh, now it's hit 60. Oh, now it's hit 70.
How can you say that? Surely a barnstorming, rousing oratory, the like of which only Keir Starmer can deliver, was bound to reverse the decline of his fortunes, wasn't it?
I mean that coming hot on the heels of his amazing interview with The Observer, in which he said he'd like to be in charge for 10 years. And everyone went,
what? There'd be nothing left.
Yeah. Have you seen this? Russell Quirk has got lovely eyes, apparently, just said there.
Are you saying that?
Oh, that's from... Sorry, it's from Pooch, actually. No, I think Pooch is... I'll tell you what, right? I'm going to tell this story in slightly more detail, but we're slightly traumatised this morning. And I'll tell you why. My car's gone in for a service, right? So I basically press-ganged my son into giving me his car for a few days because I couldn't be bothered getting an Uber into work. And he's got this BMW sports car, rather nice. It's second-hand, it's a bit older. And I came out this morning, I thought, and it's manual, and I was thinking, there's going to be a problem, I'm going to start it. Anyway, it all went fine. Drove to the office, stopped to get the papers. Everything was absolutely, copacetic, as they say. Got to the office and, got out of the car to open the gate, right? Shut the car door, opened the gate, went to get back in the car door's locked. Engine running. Key inside, the car locked itself. I'm like, what?
Okay.
How is this possible? So I don't know if it's a BMW staple. Hey?
Where's the key? Is it the key in the
Key's
car?
in the ignition. The engine was running. Because what I do in the Maserati is I get out of it, I leave the engine running, I literally walk 5 yards over there, open the gate, get back in the car, drive in, which is what I thought I would do. So thank Christ we have Pooch, who is not only an expert producer and a builder and a designer and a historical genius and a man that knows everything there is to know about linguistics. He also knows how to break into cars with a coat hanger.
Well, that's the sign of a misspent youth.
I mean, I'm talking, misspent youth is not wrong. And he managed to open the door. Because I'm thinking, because it's sitting half in the road, half, where the gate is. And I'm thinking, what do I do now? And I was thinking, I'm going to smash the window with a brick. I rang my son up, who was obviously asleep. I'm like, has this ever happened before? No. There's another key. Yeah, the other key's at my house, but he's not sure if it works. I'm like, has it got a proper a metal bit so that I can actually put it in the... Because I could go back there in Pooch's car, get that key, come back. But, at this point, it's about 6:30. And I'm on the air in half an hour.
Wow.
Anyway, so we got here in the end. Sorry, anyway, I'll tell that story in greater detail later. But yeah.
Car theft skills.
I mean, thank God for Pooch is all I can say. It's not the first time I've said it. Today is the day, isn't it? I mean, it looks as though there's a cabinet meeting this morning. It looks like Shabana Mahmood went over the top yesterday. It looks like Yvette Cooper's told him that he has to go. I don't see him surviving past midday today.
No, well, but he, up until yesterday, still had this resolve to carry on facing the challenges, which, as we know, are the challenges that he himself has been responsible for, ironically. No, I'm not sure he's going to. I don't think he's going to go easily still. I really don't. I mean, that cabinet meeting, I ought to be a fly on the wall. Be very interesting to see who breaks cover, who's got the courage of convictions, who's got an iota of integrity and
Yes.
honesty to stand or sit in that cabinet room and say, Prime Minister, I think it's time we moved on. And who will carry on being a Steve Reed, who is the housing secretary, and say, oh, no, Prime Minister, you're doing a wonderful job. Everything is just fantastic. I don't know what they're moaning about. Carry on, because he knows that you won't get a job in a future cabinet. And that's what this comes down to, I'm afraid, when it comes to MPs, particularly cabinet members and ministers. They're not thinking about the country, Mike. They're not thinking about the good of the government. They're thinking about, well, I'll vote for the person, support the person that I think is going to give me a job. Or indeed, and this would have happened over the last 3 or 4 days, the Angela Rayners, even the Andy Burnhams and the Wes Streetings of this world will be running around offering people cabinet positions right now in order to support them. So you end up, yet again, it's this kind of revolving door of incompetence where you end up with the people in cabinet running the country. And this basically doesn't also apply just to the Labour Party now, it applies to successive and previous Conservative governments. You end up with people in place that can't do the job because perhaps they had some support behind them. They might have bought 10 votes with them. So you end up with someone like David Lammy in cabinet because he has a faction, not because of his ability. And that's going to happen all over again with, I hate to break up the celebrations here, guys, in terms of Starmer going, but what comes next? If anyone thinks that what comes next is better than what we've had over the last circa 2 years, well, wait and see. You've got another thing coming, because Angela Rayner is going to lurch the Labour Party, the government, and therefore the country even further to the left, even further. So more ostracisation of landlords and the wealth creators and business owners, employers of this country. So that's about to happen. Andy Burnham's going to try and find his way back. Don't forget, Andy Burnham is the man that decided for years to ignore the grooming gangs in his backyard up in Manchester.
Let's also not forget that in Manchester, during his time as mayor, crime has gone up. The cost of living has gone up. They've introduced bus gates. They've introduced congestion charges. They've introduced, speed cameras and those inside your car cameras. Manchester is not in a better place than it was before he was mayor.
No, it's not. Look, because, a lefty is a lefty, I'm afraid. And honestly, if you think that anyone on the left with socialist tendencies can run things, well, again, that is disproven year after year, decade after decade. You only have to go back to the 1970s, which we're now mirroring, by the way.
Yes.
The days of, rubbish piling high on the streets, bodies in morgues, because of the unions. And ultimately, and here's where there might be a general election. I don't think a general election happens as it should when we now have a change of Prime Minister. Remember all those changes of Conservative Prime Minister in kind of 2016, 19 and so on. The Labour Party shouting and screaming that there should be a general election. Well, they won't be screaming that now, but of course we will be as Reform. The Conservatives and the Lib Dems will be, because we want change. But there won't be, I'm afraid, a general election now because of this debacle over Starmer. But there might be in the next 12 months or so, particularly if Angela Rayner becomes Prime Minister, because of the state of the economy. I mean, the economy is already teetering on a knife edge. Yeah. If we end up in a situation where we have to go back to the IMF, like we did in 1976 under Labour, with our cap in our hand, begging because we're bankrupt. We're not far away from that, bankrupt. Yeah. That could cause an emergency, a snap general election, probably in 2027.
Yeah. Well, look at the thing that happened with Liz Truss. Amazingly, the city doesn't seem to be reacting the same way to Keir Starmer's foibles as it did to hers, because the price of gilts, the yields on gilts are higher, much higher than they ever were under Liz Truss, and yet the BBC are silent, the FT are silent, the Times are silent, no media commentators are coming out and saying that we are in the deep doo-doo. We're borrowing in excess of £20 billion a month just to pay mostly off the debt. Interest that we've got, we're incapable of finding any more money to pay for anything. We can't afford, there was a piece of the Times, I think it was last week, saying we can't afford to buy any more weapons. So if there was a war that we had to defend ourselves in, we'll have to wait until 2030 before we can buy a couple of guns.
Yeah, and all of this stuff, there's no point trying to re-rehearse to the Labour Party what they should do, which is to cut taxes so that we end up being a prosperous nation that feels makes people feel that working hard, running businesses, taking risk pays off, which obviously in itself trickles down to the rest of the economy. Getting rid of all this DEI, net zero nonsense, and getting rid of the cost of the asylum project, which I think it's fair to say has failed, Mike. All of that stuff, if you park all that rubbish or that ideological nonsense, then you have enough money to reduce taxes and also to spend stuff on things like potholes and the NHS and so on. So, but we know that the Labour government, because they're left-wing, aren't going to do that. They still have this philosophy that if they keep spending public money, somehow that's growth, which of course it isn't.
No.
Chasing wealth creators that pay loads and loads of tax to fund the public sector out the door is somehow smart. What was the old Thatcher thing? Do you remember years ago when Thatcher said the problem with socialism is that one day you run out of other people's money?
Yeah.
We're seeing that playing out in front of our very eyes. So, but that, my point is that doesn't change under the next leader, even if it's Wes Streeting. I think it's fair to say it's probably to the right of the Labour Party. I mean, not that I support any of them, but if you and I had to choose between Lammy, Rayner, Burnham or Streeting, if you had to, you'd probably choose Streeting. He'd probably be slightly better for the country. But that's also
I don't know, though. I mean, I said this to Pooch yesterday. I mean, it's amazing, is it not, that we are being presented with this kind of fait accompli, which is that Starmer goes, which I think is important because I do think he has to learn the lesson of history, which is that you cannot treat the people like complete and utter idiots. You cannot be so disrespectful to your own country that the whole country turns on you, because that's exactly what's happened. You know, he's disrespected the flag. He's basically called anyone that doesn't vote Labour racist and fascist. He's talked about, even yesterday, dangerous opposition and a dark road that we're going to go down and chaos ensuing. What does he think he's created over the course of time? But, I mean, the idea that Wes Streeting, a guy who once threatened to throw somebody under a train, who has got some kind of
set fire to someone's house, wasn't he?
Set fire to somebody's house. Also, I think has got some kind of connection to the Cray twins through his family. And Peter Mandelson. I'm not quite sure whether he's worse than the Cray twins. I think you can make that argument. And suddenly he's now being talked about as if he should be the leader of this country. He's messed up the NHS. He's broken his promise to fix it. He's lied about the reduction in waiting times and lied about the waiting lists as well, as they all have. You know, none of these people are fit to rule, a jumble sale, never mind Britain.
Yeah, no. Well, and I think that applies to the political class. I mean, I don't want to get deep in detail here as a kind of dinner party conversation about my philosophy around how politicians and therefore MPs should be selected. But we have had 20 or 30 years of people that want to be in politics for career purposes. They want to climb the Greasy pole from university to working in Labour or Conservative central office, carrying a bag for an MP, become a special advisor, then have a go at being an MP, then become an MP, then become a minister. And that's why you end up with hapless, idiotic, incompetent people in politics. What we want to start doing is encouraging people that have lived a life, that have had to look down the back of the sofa for a bus fare every now and again, that have changed a wheel, that have brought up kids, that have had a business, that have been hired and fired in business.
Broken into a car.
Had a talk show, or two, or three. But seriously, we need real people in politics, don't we? And I've got back into politics, as you know, over the last few months.
Yes, and well done to you, because I haven't actually said it on the air. Well done for winning yet another victory for reform.
Well, we're not losers, Mike, are we? You and I. So
we're not.
So yeah, it was great to go up and be one of 53 Essex County councillors that were elected for reform on Thursday. I'm proud beyond belief. Honestly, I had an induction day at County Hall yesterday, which was fun, but also very humbling, I have to say, very humbling. Big job still. But looking around the room, look at Essex as an example. I spent, as you would imagine I would, the first hour and a half of my day yesterday at County Hall, meeting the people that I hadn't already met that are now councillors. Obviously, I know a lot of them, but I didn't know everybody. And honestly, I've got to tell you that there wasn't a career politician in the room of the 53. And there are hedge fund managers, there are waste company CFOs, ex-head teachers, community leaders. So I'm looking around this room, Mike, honestly thinking, this is the future. When it comes to them becoming members of parliament, these are the people that we want, because they understand ordinary men and women. They understand society. They understand the rigours and the challenges that people face. Not these Westminster bubble types that funnily enough, because they are in a bubble, they don't make decisions that accord with what is right for the country. So
Yeah.
anyway, look, there is hope, is what I'm saying. But yeah, look, back to the Starmer thing. Does he go today? Do you honestly think he's going to resign? No, I don't think so. I think what's the required amount of Labour MPs? I think is it 82 to force a vote with no confidence.
Yeah. That's the theory. But of course, I must make this point as well that, when I was saying back in summer of 2024, this guy will not last the course, this bloke will screw this up to such an extent that he will have to leave. I was told by all sorts of, political luminaries in our business, that can't happen. There is no method by which Labour governments can get rid of their leader. The Tories do that, Labour doesn't do it. It's never going to happen. Now they're all going, oh yeah, well, we told you this would happen. Well, I was the only one that was saying it, right? And once again, I was proved right. The bottom line is that all of the rules only work until they don't. And so in the end, you can find a way to do everything. As Nigel Farage has found, occasionally if somebody says you can't do something, there's a rule here that says you can't do it. We'll change the rules then. That's the way it works. Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I think don't get too hung up on the numbers, but I think there probably are as many as 81 now if we need them to say go. And I think there's a piece in the Mail today, Dan Hodges has written it, saying one minister told me the PM's got nothing left, but his wife is the one who can convince him to quit. And I just think, we've all had friends, I guess, and people certainly that we've known in business or in just, general life, who won't listen to anyone, who don't see the writing on the wall. How do you not know your wife's having an affair? They don't want to know. How do you not know your child is on the missing list and is having a terrible time and is hanging around with the wrong people? And they don't want to know. But everybody else knows. And so Starmer is that guy now. Everybody else knows he should walk away. He's got no power. He's got absolutely no authority. And the best thing for him to do some people said to me yesterday, watching him, you wonder about his sanity because he's actually so deluded that he thinks that he can carry on. And he can't carry on. I mean, he's done. He's a busted flush. Stick a fork in him, as they say in America. It's the end. And if he doesn't see it today after a cabinet meeting where his senior aides, like the Home Secretary, the Foreign Secretary, and several other high-ranking members of the cabinet tell him it's time for you to go, and he doesn't actually come up with a plan for how he's going to go, then I think they'll have to get more drastic.
Well, no, they will. And of course, look, this is also the man, don't forget, that before he got elected in 2024, said that it was all going to be about country first and party second, and doing the best thing. Well, if ever there was a time to put country first, it's now. But the problem is, obviously, we know that Starmer is full of robotic rhetoric and stuff that's written for him and put in front of him. So what the man says and what the man actually feels and does, they're very, very different things. I mean, to the point about his personal life, I suppose we should tread a bit carefully, right? Because there's other people here, like his wife, who, although she would have encouraged him to be an MP and Prime Minister, I mean, you wouldn't want to be Vicky Starmer, would you? I mean, come on. That's probably the worst job in the world.
Yes.
The other thing, I mean, she probably has to go out with a hood on. The other thing is, you talk about friends. You've just had a stage show with all your friends on stage, right? Mike Graham and friends, right?
Yeah.
So you've got people around you that actually, love you and would probably we have given you some hard advice, right?
Yeah.
Do you think Keir Starmer's got any friends?
No, absolutely none. Literally none.
That's the problem, isn't it? So my mates would say to me, "You've been a dick." Your mates will say to you, mate, don't do that. You have some candor. But I can't imagine Keir Starmer having best buddies that are on a WhatsApp group or that, take him out for a beer at the Westminster Arms every day.
Well, and if he did have one, it was probably Morgan McSweeney, who was supposedly the man that made him into who he was. And I mean, again, I would say if this bloke's such a genius, one, how come he's out of a job? Two, how come he got everything wrong? And three, how come his kind of, his creature, Keir Starmer, is so bloody useless at his job? Well, let's play a couple of clips from yesterday because I think it's worth doing. I know many people would have just not wanted to watch him because he's so awful. But here he is talking about dangerous opponents. This is when he got up. And of course, he had the sleeves rolled up look. He decided not to wear a jacket. He decided to fill the hall that he spoke, well, it's a room more than a hall, with sort of, adoring fans who clapped when they were told to clap. He was reading from an auto cue, supposedly, giving us his cri de coeur and his compassionate kind of, passionate address to the nation. But he couldn't do it without having a bloody, also cute. Here he is talking about his dangerous opponents. That's all right. That's an old one.
The election results last week were tough, very tough. We lost some brilliant Labour representatives. That hurts, and it should hurt. I get it. I feel it. And I take responsibility. But it's not just about taking responsibility for the results. It's about taking responsibility to explain how, as a political and electoral force, we will be better and do better in the months and years ahead. Because we are not just facing dangerous times, but dangerous opponents, very dangerous opponents. This hurts not just because Labour has done badly, but because if we don't get this right, our country will go down a very dark path. So just as I take responsibility for the results, I also take responsibility for delivering the change that we promised, for a stronger and fairer Britain that we must build. I take responsibility for navigating us through a world that is more dangerous than at any time in my life. And I take responsibility for not walking away, not plunging our country into chaos as the Tories did time and again, chaos that did lasting damage to this country. A Labour government would never be forgiven for inflicting that on our country again.
I mean, you go, what? Responsibility with the U rather than I. Responsibility. Also, taking responsibility doesn't mean just saying taking responsibility. It means actually doing something about taking responsibility, which actually means probably leaving and taking responsibility and giving yourself the sack. But also, who are these people whooping in the background? Did you see at one point, even Robert Peston was asking a question and they started heckling the question. And Starmer had to go, oh, would you mind letting him finish? You literally paid these people to be there, right? And the only cabinet minister who was sitting there watching him was what's her name, Lucy Powell, wasn't it?
Yeah, Peston's also a man that takes 20 minutes to ask a question, so that's probably why they were heckling him to actually.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, absolutely right.
We'll probably find by way of an FOI request in the future that the people in the audience yesterday were paid actors.
Yeah.
From the XYZ acting school.
Perhaps they were all Ukrainians.
Yeah, here's the brief. You've got to go along to a man. It's going to look like comedy. It's going to feel like a comedy sketch, but it's not.
Yeah.
And every time he speaks or finishes speaking, as he trails off, you've got to clap. Yeah, 50 quid.
Well, according to some of the journalists that were there, they were actually holding up. Because you remember, if you ever went to the old recordings of BBC comedy shows, and they would actually hold up the sign that said clap. I think they were doing that. They were actually holding up the sign to tell people when to clap. Yeah.
So not fabricated at all.
Not at all. No. Completely by chance.
It's kind of cringeable now, isn't it? It's the sort of thing that you actually have to watch, like Parliament today, like PMQs on Wednesday if he lasts. Well, he will last because he's got to obviously exit and hand over. The Labour Party selection process for leader obviously is quite elongated. But we're watching all this stuff through our hands. What I worry about is not just the domestic politics here and the state of the country and the fact that, Keir Starmer's not even lasted 2 years. This is a man that was supposed to kind of install a revolution in politics. It was all going to be wonderful and great again, and we were going to, right the wrongs of the Conservative Party and all the rest of it. I mean, look, how's that gone? But I worry about how we look on the international stage. We've gone from the days of Thatcher and Reagan and kind of Cameron and even Blair. Right, I'm not a fan of Blair, but he was a statesman. Yeah. And now we've got Keir Starmer, who is our representative on the national stage, where you could just imagine a little WhatsApp group, which is, Giorgia Meloni and what's the guy's name from Argentina? Milei.
Milei, yeah.
and Trump and so on, just ripping the piss out
Yeah.
of the British Prime Minister. Look
Yeah.
what he's done now. They're probably creating their own memes as we speak.
Well, I mean, Donald Trump, I think, got it in one, didn't he? He said, we're not dealing with Winston Churchill here, because we're really not. We're not even dealing with Winston the dog.
I was going to say Churchill and dog, yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you what, if you think that's funny, wait till you see this. This is Lucy Powell, right, after the speech, telling us how good she thought it was.
I thought that was a really personal and a really good speech that set out very clearly what motivates him. And I think that's what people want to hear. What motivates him, what motivates this Labour government, what we get up every day trying to fight for, which is to fundamentally break up the status quo so that this country works in the interests of ordinary working people. And I thought he made a compelling case for that.
I mean, what a nonsense. What does that even mean? Who gives a toss what motivates Keir Starmer, whatever that is? I mean, no one cares about that. What we care about is the state of the country.
Right.
Crime, immigration, the NHS, tax. I mean, come on. I mean, I do not wake up in the morning thinking, I wonder what's motivating Keir Starmer today. I mean, really? I mean, what a completely out of touch, nonsensical thing to say by Lucy Powell there.
I know.
I mean,
it just makes her look really stupid. I mean, there's a bit of breaking news here. Darren Jones, who's apparently out on the government round this morning, officially, obviously not coming into this studio. We've got William Clouston instead, who's far more intelligent and interesting. He will not apparently confirm the Prime Minister will continue in his role, but speaks broadly of the government and the need to continue with the government's agenda. It's not a very full-throated defence. He sounds very down, according to people.
Because the agenda is going so well. And look, he's a real cheerleader for Starmer, isn't he? And obviously, he was Chief Secretary of the Treasury. He's now is he Chief to the Cabinet Office, I think now, isn't he? So he's effectively another Morgan Sweeney. He has to say what he has to say. This starts to become cringeable for these individuals. They've kind of tethered themselves to Starmer because they want the trappings of office and the 145 grand a year ministerial salary. Now, I'm afraid, because they prostituted themselves, they've now got to go out and defend a man who is the most indefensible man to defend that this country has seen.
Well, if Darren Jones is not defending him, I think you can take that as read that nobody is now going to defend him.
Well, he's kind of, I suppose, doing that, isn't he? He's not throwing him under the bus, that's for sure. But look, it's not going to do. Steve Reed is my big example. Steve Reed is still continuing to be a cheerleader for Keir Starmer. Steve Reed's
an idiot, though. He's literally an idiot.
He's an idiot.
I mean, I've seen brighter lights in the dark.
Yeah. So, the toolbox that's missing a screwdriver kind of thing. He is hopeless. But again, look, he's clutching onto the kind of the last death rattle of power, isn't he, Steve Reed? So still people are coming out for him. But look, the question is, obviously we know he's going. Does he resign? Does he get pushed? Does he get further humiliated by the numbers getting to where they need to get to? But then, of course, we've got a vacuum because the exit of a prime minister, as far as the Labour Party rules are concerned, means I think it takes 3 months, doesn't it, or so, for there now to be a leadership contest, and we're going to have the hustings. I mean, that's going to be fun, isn't it? The Labour hustings.
That's okay. No, I've got an answer for you there. You just put David Lammy in charge because he's the deputy prime minister.
I think he'd be much better, don't you?
Can you imagine? It's like ordering. I mean, if they thought ordering in a takeaway last night was expensive, wait till you get him in charge. You'll be eating all day and all night. We're literally ordering food every single second.
I mean, those two clips that I know you play rather are going to get worn out in the archives, aren't they? The one of the police officer behind him and, of course, the mastermind clip. Those two clips are going to be played, I think, millions of times over the next few days and weeks. And again, testimony to the sad state of politics in Britain, where, yes, the man that's going to be caretaker prime minister knows barely his own name and hasn't got the political awareness to know that when he says there's no police around, there's a police officer standing right behind him.
Yes, it is rather pathetic. I've also been asked to point out to you that Starmer does have some friends, but they're all mostly up at the Old Bailey at the moment, so we can't talk about it. On trial, yes, obviously. I'm not talking about lawyers. I'm talking about the accused.
There's no connection to that and the fact that this country's given billions of pounds to Ukraine. There's no connection to whatsoever. Absolutely
none. No, completely a ridiculous suggestion that. Anyway, listen, Russell, well done on getting elected. Thanks for everything from last Wednesday night, which was amazing. And also, what a blast. And what I can also say this morning is that last night, sooner than we thought, we burst through the 20 million views barrier. So we've got 20 million views now on YouTube, 160,000 subscribers. So onwards and upwards, basically.
Yeah, you're about 50 times bigger than the BBC now, I think.
Well, you know, we came in third because GB News put out a thing saying that they were the most watched programme last Friday. Sky coming a close second with something like 117,000. We ended up with 115,000, more than the BBC News channel on the show. So, so I'm claiming third place in Britain's news agenda of organisations, which is not bad after 4 months.
Understandably so. So yes, look, and that will just grow and grow and grow, as we know. And honestly, going back to Wednesday, I know I've spoken to you since, and thank you for your call of congratulations the other night. I was literally walking into do with Nigel Farage actually as you rang me.
Yes.
But honestly, and I don't want to blow smoke because people say it's obvious that you're going to congratulate them, but what you and Pooch and Don put on was, I mean, it was a kind of a celebration of you, but what a laugh! I mean, what a laugh it was, and that audience. What I think I said to you on the night, just quickly, the audience were not only kind of, you know, a little bit drunk by the end of it, but laughing like drains. They were thoroughly entertained. And the alcohol had nothing to do with it. I'm sure they were laughing at the beginning as well. No, but the serious point is, that, and I sense this as a politician, a few of us, me and Will Geddes, decided to wade into the crowd at the bar, which was brilliant, but a bit of a mistake. We got mobbed, absolutely mobbed. It was incredible. But the underlying message was that you and your show and the people on it are giving people sanity. I mean, seriously, people said that to me. I'm not making this up. People said it in droves that you helped them through the uncertainties of COVID and the aftermath and political change, you know, the lead up to the change of government in 2024, almost as their crutch, the nation's crutch, for people to be confident that there's a bit of hope, that at least there's one voice, yours and your team, that are, you know, almost a saviour of all that's wrong with broadcasting, with the mainstream media, with Ofcom and with politics. So I think I called you the David Koresh of broadcasting, which I hope you took it in the jovial sense.
Yeah, no, I said we're going to set fire to the building, get the FBI in, so any minute now.
I mean, people were there and they are grateful. I mean, not just fans.
Yeah.
They're grateful.
Well, because yesterday again, I watched Beth Brigby at the end of Starmer's speech, and she actually said that it was a very heartfelt speech. People will be impressed with his passion. I'm going, sorry, were you watching the same thing I was watching? And they seem to be embedded in this kind of Westminster bubble that they can't escape from. It's almost as though they can't see what's actually going on in front of their eyes.
Can I read this comment? Absolutely 100%, Russell. I don't know what I'd do without Mike Graham. I mean, seriously, but people are not messing about. They mean it.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. Well, listen, Russell, great week last week. Another great week coming up this week. We can only keep our fingers crossed. I've got a split of champagne behind me, which if he goes during this show, I'm opening it. I don't care. You know, I'm doing it. Anyway, listen, have a great day. Russell Quirk, thanks. Good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. William Clouston's here. We've got his view on the way of the world. But it looks as though this morning already it's deteriorating before his very eyes. Keir Starmer's probably been up all night. Darren Jones, one of his apparatchiks, out doing the rounds this morning, not backing him, not suggesting that he's going to stay as Prime Minister. I think it's all over. And we've been saying it, of course, for a long time. I will be celebrating, as I'm sure you will, when that moment finally comes. It may not come during this show, but if it does, we're having a party, Pooch. What do you reckon? Yeah. Big time. Coming up, as I say, William Clouston's here from the SDP. First, though, let's get some news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning. I'm Edward Hughes. Following heavy Labour losses in last week's local Scottish and Welsh elections, over 70 Labour MPs have publicly called for him to resign or set a departure timetable. Cabinet splits emerged, with some ministers urging an exit. In a make-or-break speech yesterday, firebomber target Starmer took responsibility for the results, vowed to prove doubters wrong, and pledged a reset, including closer EU ties to boost the economy and counter Reform UK. Other headlines: British Steel, Starmer announced plans to nationalise the Scunthorpe Works, which has been under temporary government control. Economy and travel: impacts from the Iran conflict continue, with falling Heathrow passenger numbers and a cooling jobs market. In short, it's a day of high political drama at Westminster amid ongoing global tensions. Please remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
Edward, thank you very much indeed. We've got a poll going at the moment, which is absolutely fantastic. You know how we love our polls. This morning, the 4 most welcome departures in British history. Romans leaving Britain in 4010 AD. The Black Death finishing in 1380. Spanish Armada sailing off in 1588. Or Keir Starmer stepping down, which, surprise, surprise, is the winner at the moment. 93% of people think Keir Starmer is more important stepping down than the Spanish Armada, the Black Death and the Romans leaving Britain. So I think that tells you everything you need to know. Morning, William Clouston's here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're living through a crisis. I wish, to be honest, Mike, a lot of people will be happy about this.
Yeah.
And it's good to see it in a way. He's completely vacuous, useless Prime Minister with no ideas.
Yes.
But his father was a toolmaker, right? So maybe that makes it better. But seriously, it is a crisis. We've got an economic crisis, and now we're right in the middle of a political crisis.
Yeah.
And Paul Embry was interesting. I was listening to the Blue Labour people in the Labour Party because they're the only sensible ones.
Yes.
And he made a good point, actually. He said the Labour Party needs shock therapy. And I think they do, but I think the whole political class needs it.
Yes.
I think they're sitting there, you talk about the bubble, we're in London, but this is it. And none of them have any reality.
No.
None of them can see.
They can't see it. But I find that extraordinary. I mean, I can't honestly explain it. You know, I've been in this business a long time. And when I was a reporter back in the 80s and the sort of very early 90s, journalists were quite sensible.
Yeah.
They weren't part of the establishment.
No,
in fact, they quite the reverse. They didn't want to be part of the establishment, and they wanted to ask questions.
Yeah.
And they were more likely to get thrown out of a press conference than to stand there kind of afterwards going, well, that went really well.
Yeah.
But nowadays, they seem to not know how to do that.
No, they don't ask the right questions.
No.
Not at all. I mean, any of the major things that people care about, they don't ask any questions at all. No, it's the whole... I'm very worried. There's a broader thing, which you've covered a lot about the elections last week. But there's one thing, this is a massive revolution. The public are sick and tired. They are desperate, actually, for change. And it's, you can see things like the reform wave that happened last week. You can read about it. But I tell you what, if you're in a accounting room in Leeds and you see the tables and you see the actual votes, this is a massive tidal wave, and water's heavy. It's an incredible thing.
Yeah. And also, the people know what they want. It's not difficult to figure out what it is that they're asking for. They want secure businesses. They want to have
secure borders.
Secure borders.
Yeah.
They want to have the ability to walk down the street without getting attacked.
Yeah.
They want to feel that their children go out at night without being raped or murdered or stabbed. And they want also the economy to be running in such a way that they have opportunities to go to work.
Yeah.
They don't get taxed to within an inch of their lives. I mean, the story this week that sums up the problem in this country, I think, for me, was the one in which the Department of Work and Pensions have said that if you've got more than one wife, you'll actually get more benefits now. So it's not only if you've got more children, it's now, so I think I'm just going to go out and marry 3 or 4 different women and just go on the dole.
Well, the interesting thing about that is that, you can live with 3 or 4 women, but if you make honest women of them, you can't actually.
No.
You can't. But I thought bigamy, it's illegal in this country.
Right.
This is ridiculous. People see stories like that and they think, who is in control? We have someone that's a minister at the Department of Work and Pensions. Why aren't they responsible for this? Just say no. What are you doing? What are you paid for? You can't have that.
No, exactly right. And that's the thing. And people sort of see the world around them being run by people who don't have a clue as to how ordinary people's lives actually work.
Not at all.
And so they just don't want any part of it anymore.
It's slogans. If you offer empty slogans and you have no idea, I've been listening to Starmer for the best part of 10 years.
Yeah.
He's never said anything on the economy that I've thought intelligible.
He didn't say anything yesterday, did he?
No, it's embarrassing. It's as someone said, actually, it's worse than AI, what he delivered.
Yeah.
It's insulting. It's the same thing. But on all these issues, you speak to Steve Reed, you mentioned Steve Reed, build, baby, build. That's a slogan.
Yeah.
He has no means of. You say, what do people want? They want an affordable house.
Yeah.
And if you're a young person, you want to be able to afford your rent.
Right.
There's no chance of that if they don't build. They don't know how to build.
No, but this is the thing. He spent probably, what 24 to 48 hours coming up with that speech yesterday. It was supposed to be the speech of his life. And it was rubbish.
It's rubbish.
And if that's what he thinks is what people want to hear,
it was
that tells you even more how dislocated he is from reality.
Totally dislocated. His best idea, his only idea in that speech, Mike, was the great leap backwards to go and join the EU.
Yeah.
He's bitter about the 2016.
Yeah.
He was the most bitter MP
Yeah.
about that. There were a lot of bitter MPs about what the public did
Yeah.
then. He's the most bitter MP, fought it tooth and nail.
Yeah.
And now when the economy's on its uppers, we've got a major crisis, all he can say, well, let's join the EU. Let's have,
Right.
people aren't, we've decided that a long time ago.
Yes.
Can't he face it?
I know. And can't he also see that when he looks at the economies of all of those European Union nations,
Going
they're
nowhere.
actually in worse shape than we are.
Going nowhere.
So the idea that we have somehow suffered because of Brexit is nonsensical.
No, you can't see it in the macro trade picture. I literally can't see it. If you did a blind, if you lined up France, Italy, Germany against this economy, and you said which one left, you can't tell. In fact, Italy looks as if it left, but it's fully aligned. No, they have no ideas. It's absolutely desperate. I'm worried about the country because I think the Tories are improving. Reform, there's a lot of anger. A lot of the people that voted Reform, I totally understand it. They're desperate for an answer somewhere.
Yeah.
And as I say, it's an absolute revolution. I don't think
and they're putting their hopes into Reform.
They are putting, but what you will see because the vetting and the speed at which Reform has come along, you will see 2 or 3 bad stories per week on their candidates.
Probably.
11. It would happen.
But that's also because the media are looking for them.
They will.
You can find any number of bad stories. I mean, funnily enough, when people were asking at the weekend about Nigel Farage and the 5 million gift from that guy down in Thailand, right? People have forgotten that Keir Starmer took a £5 million bung, effectively, from an offshore trust in the Caribbean just before he became the Prime Minister.
It wasn't just that. It was ties, expensive ties, suits.
Oh, yeah, but what I'm saying is there's an absolutely similar story which the media aren't touching.
But here's the thing, Mike. I don't think the public mind, I don't think they're bothered anymore about that. It's the same as Trump. Before the 2016 election, Trump, the revelations about Trump, the public didn't care. Actually, the public are beyond this now.
Yeah.
They're clutching at something, and it can't be the establishment. Yeah. It's like I think it'd be interesting to see how the timetable works. Obviously, we're finished now, but he's like insolvency practitioners tell you about these companies that go bust, and the chairman of the company is at his desk, and they're literally taking the desk away and say, "Mate, it's over. Sorry, it's over." Yeah. It may be a little bit like that. There's a lot of denial in it, but
there's a kind of comical alley aspect to it.
There is,
Americans are not here.
That's right.
They're right over your shoulder,
actually.
Let's have a look actually at what he said, because there was one thing he came out with yesterday, which again clearly he thought was going to be this revelatory kind of move towards the rescuing of British steel. I don't know if you looked into that, but have a look at what he said about British steel.
Starting with British Steel. Because what we did in Scunthorpe last year is one of the proudest things we have done in government. That plant was hours away from closure, and that is thousands of jobs gone, an entire region decimated, Britain's security exposed. And so we acted. Parliament was in recess, but it didn't matter. As a united Labour Party, we passed emergency legislation and we took control. And we must bring that same urgency to everything now, starting, appropriately enough, with Scunthorpe, because steel is the ultimate sovereign capability. Strong nations in a world like this need to make steel. That's why we're backing steel in Port Talbot and across the UK. But in Scunthorpe, we've been negotiating with the current owner, and a commercial sale has not been possible. And now a public interest test could be met. So I can announce that legislation will be brought forward this week to give the government powers, subject to that public interest test, to take full national ownership of British Steel.
And the other thing that was so weird about that, apart from the fact that, as Richard Tice pointed out later, the whole point of saving British steel for Starmer is to make a sort of a point at a press conference where people are whooping and shouting, and you just know that that's all rehearsed and fake, right? People were actually holding up cards, going clap, cheer, go whoop whoop whoop. But they want to do away with what is called hard steel because they don't want to use blast furnaces. They want to use electric furnaces, which mean that they can't make steel which is any good for ships. No. They can't make steel that's any good for anything military or industrial. No. That all they can do is make soft steel effectively, which is of no use to man or beast.
It's just a recycling thing now. Yeah. So you've got specialist steel in Sheffield actually with Forge Masters. But no, this is what Starmer has done in this press conference is throw a little bit of what he thinks is red meat to the left. Will nationalise something. It's a sort of reflex. In fact, actually, this is just the end product of a total indifference from all the political class. I mean, we've let foreign competitors buy these key industrial assets for years. Same in Port Talbot, same in Scunthorpe. We've let them buy it, and usually what happens is, okay, well, it doesn't matter who owns it because it doesn't matter who produces anything. So the Chinese buy it.
As long as we can tax
them. Would the Chinese let us buy their steel industry? No. Anyway, no. So they buy it, and the last thing is then it gets closed as a branch plant.
Right.
And the government said, what do we do now? Well, they should never have let these things go into foreign ownership in the first place if they cared about the country.
And of course, he doesn't mention Port Talbot because Port Talbot is not a success story.
No.
And therefore, we try and pretend it doesn't exist.
Disaster.
But, so today, it looks as though he's going to be told by several senior members of a cabinet that he needs to go.
Shabana Mahmood has already told.
Yeah, and so is Yvette Cooper, we understand. Yeah. The problem, I suppose, now is physically shifting him. Because it's almost like he's just going to occupy number 10. Yeah. We've got the King's speech on Wednesday, tomorrow.
Yeah. Good timing.
So he may not go, obviously, before that happens. But surely, do you think today, I think today he'll have to come out and say something about his departure, when it's going to happen, as opposed to whether it's going to happen.
He has to, and all parties have rules, detailed rules about how you can get a new leader in, and there are lots of hurdles there. You can't just get rid of the rules. You can't appoint someone. It's not like the Tories in the early, the 50s and the 60s where Lord Home emerges. Remember that? They used to just emerge. Not like that. There are proper rules. Yeah. And the major hurdle for some of the, possibly the key contender, Burnham, is that he's got to get into the Commons.
I don't think he's going to make it.
I don't. Well, can you find a seat that Labour would win?
No.
I don't think so.
Well, somebody mentioned yesterday when I was watching and listening to various different programmes, there's a seat in Scotland coming up, because I think one of the Scottish Labour MPs has gone into the Scottish Parliament.
Yeah.
So his seat will become...
He won't win this.
But he wouldn't. You can't just parachute him into
Scotland.
Scotland.
I think the public would give it two fingers. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think they'd say, no, we're not having this. They're not being manipulated. No. You'd have to find on the. I
mean, it would have to be a Manchester sort of scenario, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think it would be. He might win a seat in Manchester, and there are rumours of an MP or two MPs thinking about stepping aside. If what would happen is they'd step aside and they'd go into the Lords, whatever.
Which is also kind of corrupt in its own way.
It is pretty corrupt. I think the public is sick of it. So we don't know, but it won't be quick, Mike. It won't be quick.
Buttering their own toast, I think, has come to an end, and so it should.
Yeah. So anyway, all of these things, it's not ideal, far from ideal from the Labour Party's point of view. They have rules. I think it'll take some time. Yeah. So he'll be sitting there for some time, I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, did you see, for example, yesterday's leaked Harriet Harman tweet, in which she sent a tweet to a guy, I think one of the outgoing heads of a council somewhere, where she more or less said, how do you fancy getting a place in the House of Lords?
Yeah, do you fancy that?
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's corrupt.
It is corrupt. And I think, again, people have just had enough. Yeah. And while reform might not be perfect, they are certainly different enough, I think, to whet people's appetite. And I know that there are many places, there are many miles to go and all of that before a general election. If there was a general election soon, which I would quite like,
I don't think
reform aren't ready.
They're not ready, and you're just into a political crisis. The Labour Party, I've said for some time actually, is in much more vulnerable position than the Tories. If you see, as I say, I was in Leeds last. Luckily, the Middleton Park, the bit we held off reform and actually kept our seat there, so that was important. But you see it, Labour in that seat. Shows you the magnitude. A few years ago, Mike, before we got involved, swept them out. Labour were polling 3,700 votes in that division. Yeah. Do you know how many they got? 700.
Wow.
It's collapsed.
It's just gone.
It's scary.
Yeah.
I mean, from their point of view...
Well, even places like Wigan, where they lost every seat.
Totally.
Sunderland, where they lost every
Hartlepool.
seat. It's not coming back, by the way.
It's not coming back. Well, people know if you hate them, right? And I think the Labour Party hates the working class. I think that's the root of it. People have had enough of it.
Yeah.
Paul Embry's talked about it, written about it. You don't. People aren't mugs.
Well, do you know when it began? And I think this was also a massive sort of own goal, I suppose, at the weekend when Gordon Brown was suddenly dragged out of the coffin and put back into power as if he was some kind of political and financial genius.
Odd socks Brown.
Which he isn't. And then all these Labour people came out and said, oh, he's very well respected in the party. Well, not in the country, he's not.
No.
And then everybody started playing the old bigoted woman clip.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of the end, I think, for
it's
Labour,
awful.
because that was the true nature of how these sort of so-called left-wing intellectuals saw the working class. They just think they're bigoted, horrible, nasty individuals.
But he said that. But this is the thing, Mike. This is a politician meant to be a. What is politics about? You've got to persuade people that you're on yours. You've got to persuade people of your arguments. That's what it's about. Starmer, his best idea, has basically the last few press conferences has been anyone that's concerned about a migrant hotel in their village or town is a racist.
Yeah.
It's far right.
Right.
Great way to win votes.
And he also started slagging off everybody who voted Reform yesterday in his press conference.
Of course.
And everybody that voted Green.
Yeah.
And that the reason they did that is because you slagged them off.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
How stupid do you have to be?
No, he's really inept, completely inept. But there is a broad. I mean, sad thing is, I don't think the fundamental problems in the country, economic stagnation, the debts building up, the welfare binge we have that no one is dealing with, Mike. You know, welfare bill just goes up and up and up. Entitlement spending goes up and up and up. It's in our new paper, Investment State. None of these fundamentals are going to be sorted. So you can change the leader if you like. Burnham won't be able to sort it.
Right.
It is sad for the country because what happened to the Tories is now happening to the Labour Party. What might help, and I support proportional representation because I think it allows competitors to come in. What we've had is this awful situation of the two parties denying competitor parties coming in under the system. But if you open it up, it may be a sort of safety valve. At least people would get people in. At least Parliament might finally look a bit like the country.
Yeah, that's going to take a while.
It's going to take a while.
It is going to take a while because, I mean, Reform come from a different place as well, where they're not all consuming, are they? They're not. They don't have. It's not a broad church particularly. And I don't say that with any degree of negativity.
Yeah.
It just isn't.
Well, the thing is, reforms. I mean, I want the system to change, right? So I have some sympathy with them. As you know, I did an electoral pact with them last election. But the Reform members agree on one thing, which is they want to cut immigration. They don't agree on much else, actually. If you're a South-East Reform supporter, you might not actually be aligned to what people want in Barnsley.
Right.
A little bit different. So they've got to sort that out. I'm afraid we're in for a rough ride.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. Let's have a look at a couple of other clips as well, because I think we should watch Beth Rigby. Talking of why the politicians in this country are not properly held to account, is Beth Rigby asking him a question yesterday.
Back in 2021, when Labour lost hundreds of council seats in the Hartlepool by-election, you thought about resigning as Labour leader, explaining, and this is quoting you, "I didn't feel I should be bigger than the party." But these results, this moment, is so, so much worse than then. You've lost nearly 1,500 councillors, 40 councils, you've lost Wales. Haven't you, for one moment, thought you should step aside in the interests of the party and country? And if you haven't, why haven't you? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Beth. I think what we witnessed with the last government was the chaos of constantly changing leaders. And it cost this country a huge amount. A huge amount. And I'll tell you who paid the price. It was working people. They paid the price of this. They are still paying the price of this. A Labour government will not inflict that on our country again. We were elected with a mandate to change this country because of what had gone before. And that is what we will do. Yes, I acknowledge the frustration. Yes, I acknowledge the results are tough. Yes, I acknowledge that we've lost brilliant representatives across the United Kingdom. And I have a responsibility for that. But I also have a responsibility to deliver the change that we were elected and that we promised this country. And I'll deliver on that. Thank you very much, Beth.
I mean, he says he's going to deliver on the change that we promised the country. Well, they didn't really promise change, did they? They said that they were going to get rid of cronyism, which lasted about 24 hours before we found out about Lord Ali and the spectacles and the knickers and the coats and the suits and the penthouses.
Yeah.
He said they were going to bring transparency to government, which of course they didn't because they lied about so much. They said they were going to have an orderly transition because they were ready for the first 100 days of government. And poor old what's the name? Who was it? Sue
Gray.
Sue Gray didn't even last 100 days.
No, you get
93 days later, she's gone.
They're all gone.
Morgan McSweeney, the genius of the election campaign, turns out to be a complete dud.
Yeah.
And when we saw him in front of that committee the other week, I mean, what
Very
a
poor.
weird guy.
Really poor.
Very
I
bad.
mean, they're meant to have these sort of puppeteers, behind the scenes. They're really clever.
Right.
I was very unimpressed.
And terribly unimpressed. And I mean, even if you go back to the Blair years and you go, Alistair Campbell was a bit of a bully. He was a nasty character. But, if he sat in front of a committee like that, he would have been quite impressive.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't have taken any crap,
No.
And the same, as you said about Tony Blair, he wasn't everybody's cup of tea, but he was at least statesman-like. This guy just doesn't have anything.
No, it's hopeless. What I've sort of discovered again since 2018 and getting involved in politics actively again is actually it is far worse. I say this to people, it's actually far worse than you imagine. Yeah. The average sort of intelligence and insight on a parish council can be better than this.
Yeah, I noticed that when I first started working at Talk Radio, and it was summer of, I guess it would have been the summer of 2019, was it? The stalemate summer, where we were down in Westminster every single day. That's probably when we first met, I think, in the tent of shame, as I called it. And I'd have one MP after another who we'd managed to somehow get into our tent and on their way to the BBC or Sky. And I thought to myself, these are not very clever people.
No, but it's not just... some of them may be sort of technically clever, but the
a lot
problem
of
is
them
they have no life experience.
No.
And if you look, it's particularly a problem in the Labour Party. So if you want things built, I want things built. I want, nuclear power stations built. I want some housing built, infrastructure. I want these things done. The Labour Party are about the worst bunch of people to try and achieve that. None of them have any commercial experience. None of them have actually built anything. None of them have run a business. It's actually shocking. How can they manage the economy if none of them... Their backgrounds are SPADs, special advisors, PR, comms and charity work. Yeah. That's it. I mean, charity work is valuable, right, Mike? But it's not... You need breadth. You need some people
Bridget
that have
Phillipson,
some experience.
Right? All she's ever done before she came into Parliament was work for her mum's charity, which is, I'm sure, a very worthwhile organisation dealing with women's refugees and all that sort of thing. Although there are apparently some financial questions that need to be answered. Right. But that doesn't prepare you to be the education secretary of the great country that is Great Britain.
But remember that all the Dom Cummings criticisms of how the civil service doesn't function properly and how the state is incompetent and all this thing. Yeah. Well, state competence is important. We talk about it a lot. We want a state that can actually deliver a few things. Cummings talked about it a lot, and all these Labour people, we're not really interested in him. He's probably far right, whatever. They don't like him, and then they get into power and they start pulling levers, and nothing's happening. And this is the metaphor. Their ideas on economics, Mike. It's like children playing at shops. Yes, that's actually what they're like. They got into government and thought, when we're in government, we'll just do this, and we'll pull the lever, and they've pulled the lever, and nothing happens. Right. They don't know why, but they've never built...
They think they're going to tax all these people over here, and then all these people over here go, actually, no, we're not going to do that. I'll go. We're going to leave.
I'll leave, yeah.
We're not going to pay the tax.
Or you'll put you'll put VAT on independent schools and wonder why they're closed.
65,000 kids left the schools.
And wonder why those kids are now on the state. Right. And why... And all of these things, anyone with a modicum of intelligence or really experience would say that might happen, but they're useless.
So what about this paper you mentioned?
Yeah, so we've published a new green paper. It's called The Investment State. And what it does is it asks some of these important questions. Why can't we get anything done? What's happening to the public investment side, which the private sector is better at making normal goods and normal most of the things we need, obviously, than the state.
And reacting to demand.
Right? And it's dynamic. And proper
There's
markets...
the paper there.
Yeah, proper markets are that. But what we've found is, since 1975... up to 1975, investment spending, which is bridges, power stations, infrastructure, the things we need, that was at about 5 or 6% of GDP. Yeah. And entitlement spending was about that. That was what we spent on disability benefit or unemployment benefit. But what happened is, after that, entitlement spending just gradually went up and up and up and up and up. And investment spending went down and down and down. It's the gap there's a chart 4 in that paper, which just tells the story of what's happened. So public investment now is down at 1.7% of GDP. Entitlement spending is up way over 10% and getting bigger. Yeah. And we can't afford that. Right. And unfortunately, so what we say is just...
Well, what did we see last week? 600,000 families who are now making more money on benefits than the average working family
on the
can
minimum
make
wage. Yeah.
on the minimum
Well,
wage.
no one should
Well, no,
be.
the average wage, I think.
I know. Okay, well, that's even worse. But no one should be better off on benefits than someone that's working full time on the minimum wage, and yet thousands are if you get all of them. But neither party know what to do with this rising tide. You know, the number of people, Mike, in their 20s that are out of work on invalidity benefit or disability benefit because of mental health issues is rising and rising and rising. The state's attitude is, okay, we'll just sign you up and we'll just give you money to sit in your room. Inactivity. Yeah. Inactivity, Mike, is the worst thing you could do.
Of course it is.
The graph is up there.
Yeah, there you go. That is the graph. That is the graph. That tells a story. Look at it.
Yeah.
Look at it. It's devastating. If you don't invest in the future, you won't have a future.
Yeah.
Look at that red line just going up and up and up. And they have no idea. I'm afraid the paper is very blunt about the need to cut welfare and entitlement spending. I'm afraid if you want delusion and if you want to pretend that these figures can be afforded and we do nothing about, then I'm afraid the STP has nothing for you.
No.
If you want that, look elsewhere. But you can't pretend anymore. You've got to actually face it and cut back.
And one of the things that they boast about, Bridget Phillipson did it at the weekend, Starmer did it yesterday, you know, breakfast clubs, lifting children out of poverty.
Yeah.
You know, you're not lifting children out of poverty by using other people's money to tax them so that they can pay for other people's children because those people shouldn't have had the children that they can't afford.
Well, look at this. I think the priorities are wrong. Look, I'm quite old-fashioned. I think the family does have the prime role. It must have the prime role looking after kids. And I don't. This is why I don't. I mean, I think the STP supports school meals, free school meals for all people that turn up to school. I think you could. They'd be better fed. But the state shouldn't get into the business.
I don't agree with that.
No, but they shouldn't. No, but if they're at school, Mike, we think if they're at school. Forget about your crisps and
give them a
Mars bars.
decent school
give
lunch.
You don't
need to give them breakfast.
No, not breakfast. Breakfast is the family's time. It's not for the state to start. And there's the same people that start saying, well, we should feed people. It's like the Marcus Rashford thing. Yeah. We should start feeding people in the holidays. No, it's the family's job to look after kids in the holidays. It's not the state's job to do that. So not all their priorities are wrong. Anyway, check this investment state paper. It's pretty hard hitting. I mean, the authors, I said, look, diagnose the problem, give me some honest solutions about the maths on this. And I read it and I thought, wow, okay, this is going to be tough. But if you want a party that will tell the truth about this, we will do it. We will do it.
And it's called the investment state. So go and there's a link there. So if you're in YouTube now, you can find it. Just click on it and you can look at it. William, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Jane says this, and I want to play this because I think this is important. Starmer never recovered from his response to the Southport situation and the riots. I think that's true. And I think we've got Starmer being heckled in Southport. He never came back from this.
How many more children have died on our streets, Prime Minister? How many more children? How many more children, Prime Minister? Are we going to do something? Time to change, Starmer. Come on, needed. How many more children? Is it mine next? We're going to stand up for our children. Yeah. Bye-bye. Thanks, Starmer. Come on, needed. How many more children? Is it mine next? We're going to stand up for our children. Come on. Bye. Got your photo, you're leaving now. Make a real change! Are you going to change to our children? Our children! Our children are dying here because of you. Go away!
Is that it? Is it?
You're not wanted!
So as you can see, the Prime Minister is leaving now. It's getting quite tense here. There's a lot of anger in this community over what's happened. Emotions running high here.
I came here to pay my respects to the victims and families who are going through raw pain and grief that most of us can't imagine. I can't imagine as a dad myself. To get a briefing from the Chief Constable and the emergency services about the ongoing investigation, but also importantly, to have the opportunity to say to those that were responding yesterday from the emergency services, to say a personal thank you to them and to shake their hand and to say that as Prime Minister, on behalf of the country, we are grateful for what they did. They, of course, say that they will respond, they're professionals, to anything, but there's no pretending that what they had to respond to yesterday was ordinary. It was very, very difficult of them. They were absolutely professional, and it was important for me to come and say simple words, thank you. I think it touches a nerve with the whole country. It's awful to contemplate what happened, to hear for myself the experiences of the first responders, what they had to deal with. It's really hard to take in for anybody. It's not what any of them came to work for, but of course they're professionals and they deal with it. I think about the families, the friends, the loved ones, those directly impacted, and of course the wider community here. But there's no pretending, I think, that anybody in the country is not untouched by what happened yesterday.
You just can't imagine what was going through his head, can you? 19 seconds he spent putting flowers down at the point where people were heckling him, asking him what he was going to do. He didn't even have the ability to turn around and talk to anyone, which is what Boris Johnson would have done, what Donald Trump would have done, what Tony Blair would have done. And even watching him, shaking hands with the first responders, he's not talking to them. He's not looking at them. He's literally going down a line. It's impossible to imagine what goes on in Keir Starmer's head. The man is unbelievably crass, incredibly unempathetic. At the same time as doing all of that, and before rushing back to London for a party with some celebs, he was ordering Lucy Connolly being locked up. He was calling people far-right thugs. He was sending money to Muslim communities to protect their mosques. And yet, he had no compassion, really, for the ordinary people of Southport who were suffering. He talked about it, but he didn't mean it. And that's why he never recovered, and that's why people hate him so much, with a vitriol that I've never seen in any politician. It's quite extraordinary. Let's talk to Godfrey Bloom, who's here with us right now to get his view of what's happening. Godfrey, very good morning to you, sir. Welcome back.
You, Mike.
This is, in some ways, a great day, I'm hoping, because it'll be the end of Keir Starmer's career as Prime Minister, but also a bit of a sad day that we've had to come to this point in our British history politically, that this guy could have ever got into Downing Street in the first place and could have been so ridiculously kind of misinformed about what the British people want.
Aren't they all, though? One after the other. Some are better at hiding it, Mike, aren't they? I mean, Boris Johnson was full of bonhomie and he was a sort of cheerful sort of character, but he was just as sociopathic as this Prime Minister that we have. He just managed to hide it so well. And of course, his actions belayed that situation when his the Boris bulge and all that kind of stuff. The way he stopped the peace deal, in Istanbul that was signed. We're now 1 million Ukrainian dead later, but he's still bumbling along and cheerful chappy, and the press are still falling for it. He's just as bad. This guy, of course, is just appalling. He's just dreadful.
Yeah, I mean, I take your point, but I think he's worse than anyone I've ever seen. Yesterday he thought it was a great idea to get up and make a speech which was about as useless a speech as I've ever witnessed, at which the high point was, we're going to carry on delivering the change that people wanted. Well, you're not actually, because you can't. I know, let's nationalise British steel. But let's get rid of the furnaces so we can't make any steel that's worth a fag end. I mean, he's literally like some kind of, idiot savant who can't even, count the matches if he drops the box.
I think we need to just consider, and I've been saying this for some time, that yes, he looks hopeless and he is hopeless and his Chancellor of the Exchequer are hopeless. and the whole front bench are hopeless. But if you trace back their history, their political history from their student days, it begs the question, does it not, Mike? Is this not deliberate? They are communists or Trotskyists or whatever they happen to be. Their mission is to destroy this country. Are they as stupid and as inept as we seem to think, or is this part of a great plan? It's difficult to believe it's not planned. It's almost difficult to believe they can be this bad without some kind of program of events.
I take that point, but I think they actually are. Because, as I said to William Clouston, I was quite shocked back in 2018, 2019, when I spent more time in Westminster than I've ever spent, because I've always been a news journalist. I haven't spent a lot of time messing around with politicians. And I was singularly unimpressed with most of the politicians that came and sat down to talk to me. And I thought, there's nothing going on in your head. There's nothing interesting. There's nothing intelligent. You're kind of automatons. It may be something recent that we now have as a sort of the managerial class of politicians that we've got. But I just thought these people are not very bright.
That is, of course, Mike, quite true. I don't dispute that for one moment. But I think this particular front bench is very slightly different, because I think they're on a mission to destroy the country. I think the previous governments have just been hopelessly incompetent and detached and delusional. This lot, I think, you know, Miliband not drilling for oil, for example, when we're buying it from the Norwegians who drilled an adjacent oil field in the North Sea and gas. It's difficult to believe, is it not, that this isn't some kind of game that they're playing to halt the country, to stop the country, so that they can then propel it into some sort of WEF paradise. I could be wrong, Mike. You could be right. They can just be unbelievably stupid and thick. It is possible too.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also a new imperative in politics, which is that people in politics now seem to get incredibly wealthy, which they didn't used to. You know, you'd have this kind of people, you'd have a sort of a wide range of people, whether they were trade unionists or whether they were people from the left side of politics who would come in because they wanted to do some good, and people from the right who had already got quite a lot of money, you know, but nobody was getting like the riches that people like Tony Blair now have, and Gordon Brown, we're told, doesn't really have that much money, but you know, they all seem to leave office with a lot more money, like millions of pounds, before that didn't seem to happen. And I wonder if that is something that we should look at.
I think you're right there, and it seems to go unexplored by mainstream media. Nobody actually asks these people, and they're all at it to one degree or another. I mean, Angela Rayner, who can barely string a sentence together or pronounce her vowels, is now sort of a multi-millionaire. And we need to wonder about that. How did that happen? Ed Miliband is the same. All these people, I seem to be the only bloody politician who left politics without making any dough out of it. I'm really furious about it.
You're like one of those, you know what, you're like one of those footballers, Godfrey, that left football before the Premier League began and went, you know, I had to go and run a pub. You know, there's a guy over there with 12 Lamborghinis, you know, and you go, why did it all go wrong? But let's go back to your theory as well, because I'm not dismissing it. I'm just interested in what's in it for them. If it's not money, is there something else?
Well, I think if they have a political goal, which is, as I say, a sort of globalist, neo-communist ambition, and they pick up money as they go. They pick up money as they go along. So they're chasing what is, ironically, counterintuitively, a capitalist goal as they try and build a socialist utopia. But then, of course, champagne socialists aren't a new phenomenon, are they?
No.
Sadly. I mean, I blame the press again. When we had those problems with people with their hand in the till in Westminster, I spoke to the Yorkshire Post editor, because my constituency was Yorkshire, and I said, we're not all on the take. You know, there's plenty of not on the take. I didn't take my MEP salary. I haven't taken the MEP pension. The attendance allowances I gave to Yorkshire charities, all documented. And he said, I can't talk about that, Godfrey. He said, I can't talk about that. I can't sell newspapers by saying you're a good guy. And I said, well, you know, how can you slag off all these bad guys if you're not saying, just a minute, it doesn't come up with the ration? There are plenty of people from all parties, incidentally, who don't have their hand in the till.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, unfortunately, now the media, and I'm with you on blaming them for an awful lot of this, are no longer like that. They don't want to look for the bad guys. They want to try and champion the good guys and say that, you know, look at broadcast media now. People like Robert Peston, Beth Rigby, you know, they'd rather get on the Prime Minister's plane than criticise him for being a complete dolt, you know, because that's their way of life, because they think they can write a book, they think they can have a show, they think they can do a podcast. You know, it's all about the sort of the feeding of each other rather than the exploitation of each other, which was much more the case in my day as a reporter. You know, I didn't care who I upset. I didn't care if I didn't get invited to Downing Street. I just wanted to get a decent story. And if somebody was up to no good, I wanted to tell people.
Of course, but at the establishment, the blob, or whatever you want to call them, pay them so handsomely. I mean, look at Laura Cheeseburger and all these other people, Emily Maitlis and all those ghastly people. They're only on hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, but that spigot can be turned off because they're getting it from the public purse.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's the politicians in power who could just clip that off if they're not singing the party line. We go right back to Dr. David Bellamy, for example. He was out the door simply tried to expose the climate hoax, which incidentally is still going on, virtually unchallenged by mainstream media.
Well, I'm the only person that's been critical of David Attenborough. You know, as the world celebrates his 100th birthday, I put him on Plank of the Week. You know, because as far as I'm concerned, this is a guy who told a lot of bloody lies about the climate and about what was happening. Right? Of course he is. And he should stop being a grifter at 100.
The guy's rotten to the core, but he's 100 now, and he's a mate of the king, so nobody's allowed to say so. Look, I spent years in the city, 10 years in politics. I know a grifter when I see one.
Very true. And the other thing that's destroyed everything, I think, in the world, certainly in Western Europe, is immigration. And they're all signing up to that bleeding hymn book. I mean, reform, you may have a few misgivings about, but at least they're now selling the idea that immigration is wrong, which nobody has ever said in the last 25 years.
You're absolutely right. I'm not quite sure how deep the commitment goes because it seems to be a little bit blowing in the wind. The whole country is fed up with mass immigration. And they're not leading public opinion, they're following it, which always makes me slightly suspicious. I'd just like to say one or two words about that as it's come up. And that is the commitment to repatriate all the illegals and the bad guys and the crooks and the criminals and the rapists and all these people that come from abroad and we don't know who they are. Now, we're dealing now with an existential problem and we're talking with hundreds of thousands. Now, in my very undistinguished military career some time ago, many years ago, decades ago, I was with the Royal Logistic Corps and I was a movements officer for a time. And with British Army on the Rhine. It takes a lot of expertise to move big numbers of people about. It really is much more. People think, oh, just chuck them on a plane. It isn't like that. Incidentally, I'm in favour of mass repatriation, but it's got to be done right. You have to make sure these people, we're talking about aeroplanes. No, these numbers have to go on boats. You know, we have to commandeer, requisition some boats, big liners, and we have to fill them up and send them away. They have to be watered and fed en route. Also, we have a totally hostile civil service, which is largely manned by immigrants. So that's the problem. We have a very woke police force. We have a tiny army now, which is probably only about 20% of the number of immigrants that we want to repatriate. It's tiny. And the officer corps has been woked up a little bit in my view, but that's an old man speaking. But we've got to think out who's going to actually do it when push comes to shove, getting rid of hundreds of thousands of fit young men living in hotels. Who's going to shift them?
Right. Well, I had a plan for this two or 3 years ago when I said that what we should be doing with the people coming across the channel in small boats is stopping them in the middle of the channel, recommissioning some kind of old liner of some kind, as you say, and take them off the boat so they don't come to the shores of Britain, so they can't claim asylum. You put them on a boat which is effectively in international waters, and you can easily contain them on there. You can probably get a few thousand people on it, and then when it's full, sail it off somewhere, like the Ascension Islands or somewhere like that, and put them in some kind of holding camp there. And if they want to apply for asylum, they can, but they won't probably get success. And they'll all give up because they won't fancy that trip at all. But you might remember as well, the RAF were told at one point by some politician or other that we should fly them all to Ascension Island. And the RAF said, we won't do it because it's inhumane.
I rest my case about wokery in the senior command, but bear in mind, I've said this many times, Mike, and it's only because of my rather undistinguished military background I understand these things. You cannot get promoted above half colonel, which is wing commander in the Air Force, etc. You cannot get promoted to high levels unless you are politically correct and politically acceptable. And you've only got to look at some of these senior admirals, senior airmen being interviewed on TV. They are woke. They've all been spoilt at university, very often Mickey Mouse universities, and they are woke. And they're not the leaders of old. They're not the sort of Douglas Barders in the Air Force these days.
No.
These people are part of the problem. And how you can turn around and say we won't do it, by God, if I were the Prime Minister, they'd be down the road in no time without their bloody pension and stripped of their bloody buttons.
Court-martialed. And, you know, sorry, you don't get to disagree with the government and their orders. You do what you're told.
Exactly. And they don't resign. Why do they not? They never resign. You never hear of a senior officer in the armed forces resigning on a point of principle. And why? It's down to money. There's a huge difference between being a major general, a lieutenant general, or you know, in their pension fund. It's thousands and thousands of pounds of index-linked money. So they've really got to give something up if they're going to say, just a minute, no, I didn't join the forces for this. They do at junior level, you know, mid-rank, middle management. They do in disgust. And we have seen one of that lady, aircraft, Royal Air Force lady. She said, no, I will not discriminate against white young men from working class backgrounds. I'm going to recruit on meritocracy, but she had to go. The whole thing's broken. The civil service is broken. The armed forces is broken. The police is a disgusting organisation these days, much to the chagrin of junior policemen who are also leaving. Good ones are leaving in droves. And this is something only Rupert Lowe is really talking about this in depth. And we've got 2 or 3 years. We may have 2 or 3 years. It may come sooner, but we've got to have some kind of document that says this is, as Winston Churchill would say, action this day. This is what we must have, because if we're going to get elected, we're going to do this, this, and this. And you can't muck about. And all this business about we've got to get rid of the European Court of Human Rights and we've got to do this. But the days of doing all this through a parliamentary system are long gone. Long gone.
Indeed, absolutely right. We've got a little poll going today, Godfrey, because we've got to move on. But I just want to run it past you. The 4 most welcome departures in British history. 1, the Romans leaving Britain in 410 AD. The Black Death finishing in 1380. The Spanish Armada sailing off in 1588. And Keir Starmer stepping down. He's currently leading all of those other things with 93% of the vote.
Well, that just shows you can always win something no matter who you are.
Absolutely right. Brilliant to see you, as ever. Have a lovely day. Thank you very much indeed. Godfrey Bloom, they're making a perfect bowl of sense and mixing it all around and talking about it. I mean, I'm not sure whether you agree with him. You may do. There is a problem with the government of this day, and the problem with all governments is that they're all kind of doing it for the wrong reasons, and we don't know what those reasons are, and how could they possibly be thinking that ruining the country is the right thing to do. Let's talk to Gawain Towler from Reform and see what he makes of it all. Gawain, a very good morning to you, sir.
I'm just loving the idea that Keir Starmer is less popular than the bubonic plague.
I mean, he is, though. I mean, he really is. I've never met
I don't think he's
or
yet
seen...
wiped out a third of the population.
No, I mean, I've never seen a more unpopular Prime Minister in my lifetime, certainly. I don't think there's been one in the history of this country. There's literally, I mean, as somebody pointed out on our YouTube chat this morning, he has finally managed to unite the country. Everybody hates him.
Pretty much. And yet I see opinion polls today saying 18% still support Labour. And you just wonder, don't you? You just wonder.
Yeah, you really do.
However, he's now, I think it's over 80, I think, have now said he should step down.
Yes.
Of course, the only reason they have is they've looked at the results of last week's elections and gone, that's me.
Yeah. But also, imagine the calibre of the advice he's getting when on Friday and
He keeps on
Saturday.
sacking his advisors.
Well, he does, but I mean, he doesn't seem to be hiring any ones who are any better. I mean, the best advice he's had so far is to hire back Harriet Harperson, Gordon Brown, and to make a speech which was worse than any of the speeches he'd previously made, which even his own people thought were crap.
His big selling point is getting back to the heart of Europe, which is what Tony Blair said in 2001.
Yeah.
What Cameron said in 2016. That's and what was it? I'm going to last for 10 more years, and oh yes, we're not going to go left. We're not going to go right. The country
Right.
wants change, so we're going to carry on doing what we're doing.
Right, and we're going to nationalise British steel and make sure they haven't got any furnaces.
Which we've already done.
Yeah.
Which we did because Farage made him.
Yes, well, indeed.
It's
And
just-
and of course, the other great point he made was that everybody who didn't vote Labour, i.e. voted Reform and/or for the Greens, is some kind of mad extremist, possibly racist, and certainly misguided.
Dangerous. We are dangerous.
Yeah.
I'm probably about as dangerous as a cup of tea.
I mean, I've seen you, I've met you. I would not describe you as dangerous. You know, I mean, I might in a kind of in a sort of a slightly fey, sarcastic way. You know, go dangerous. Gawain is here. You know, you can stand by your beds. You know, but no, but he doesn't. But he fundamentally misunderstands why people have voted Reform in such numbers, and I can't imagine. I mean, interesting what Godfrey Bloom was saying there. Is it a deliberate mistake? Is it? Who does he think he's appealing to?
I am a believer in the cock-up rather than the conspiracy theory.
Yes.
I really am. I don't think they've got the capacity to be quite so well organised to do this. But going back to his unpopularity, I thought that when Rishi Sunak left D-Day, that was the most cloth-eared thing a politician can do.
Yes.
And yet Starmer has done that 17 times. He has. It is the most astonishing. And his commitment is to, as far as we know, his real commitment is to international law.
Yeah.
But international law is meaningless.
Right.
It has no purchase whatsoever on a country.
Yeah.
And we've got to the point where the herd has moved.
Yeah.
And the Labour Party are just about to take the stampede. And they look baffled. They look terrified. They look confused.
Yeah.
They literally don't know what they're doing there. And some of the comments made by Willie Clouston earlier, and you were talking about the sheer lack of quality.
Yeah.
I didn't agree with Jim Callaghan's policies. I didn't agree with Blair's policies, but you had people like Robin Cook. He was no small beast.
Yeah.
If you look at the early days of Thatcher's thing, Francis Pym, Douglas Hurd, Lord Carrington, Willie Whitelaw,
yeah,
these people were serious figures.
Yeah.
They had a hinterlands. They had done something before they arrived on a green bench.
Yes.
I think you're right. In the past, you had trade unionists who were absolutely committed to their local community. And I think this is what it is. Everybody was rooted. Everybody knew where they came from. And yet today, if you look on both sides of the house, the vast majority don't actually come from anywhere. It's the somewhere people and the anywhere people.
Yeah.
And what unites us is a sense of place. And what we have is a political class that has lost that sense of place because they have. What is great is you go on these international trips. I mean, how many trips has Starmer been on? Never here, Keir?
I think he's about 38 or 40 or something now.
Yeah. And there, he is perceived to be a great world leader. He is given the motorcades. He's given the shaking hands of ranks of soldiers and all the rest of it. One can feel terribly important in an international space because that space is hermetically sealed. And that space is protected from the public. You don't get to see the public when you do one of these trips.
No. But this is the thing, he's obsessed as well with international summits and all kinds of summits. I mean, all he talks about as an idea is the fact that we're going to have a summit. I think he was talking about it yesterday. We're going to set up another summit on, poverty, or we're going to set up a summit on international relations. And I think you're right that he... Yeah, but also it's the kind of the language of the plutocrat and the technocrat. It's not the language of somebody who wants to get anything done. It's somebody who wants to put a tick in a box, and when they say, what are you doing about that? Or having a summit meeting. Well, that's not doing anything about it. That's just sitting around a bloody table talking about doing something, which is not the same thing.
On the taxpayers' tick.
Yeah. And I think the thing about his international career is I think he's blown that now as well, because Trump obviously sees him as a complete moron. The only people who he gets recognition from now are the Chancellor of Germany, Merz, and Macron, the president of France. And effectively, everybody else just thinks
do that.
he's
They
a
only
bozo.
do that. They think they've got a chance of getting Britain back into the EU.
Yeah.
And they lost one of their cash cows when we left.
Yeah.
It's basically another taxable group. And if you look at the state of Germany, since Brexit, Britain has outgrown Germany, of all places.
Yes.
And the EU is struggling under its own contradictions. It has a huge problem with debt, just as we do. But they want to. And what is the first thing they say when Keir says, "I want to rejoin"? Oh, you've got to pay a billion quid a year just to have the talks.
Yes.
We've already taken your fish for an extra 20 years. We've already done this. But if you just want to talk, yeah, $1 billion a year, that'll do. This is getting ridiculous. And yet they do make him feel better because they say nice things about him.
Yeah.
Even though Merz himself has said that the EU has been a disaster. But if you're in his position, where everybody, even Darren Jones this morning was going out saying he's got things to think about.
Yes.
Well, yeah, of course he does. But I think it's about time that the Labour Party put him out of our misery.
I think so, because he's clearly not able to do it himself. And sometimes, if he's not willing to do it himself, you have to drag him out kicking and screaming, whether he likes it or not. It's not the issue. I'm looking at a new poll that's out. I don't know if you've seen it, from just after 8 o'clock this morning, a YouGov Sky Times poll with Reform UK 28%. This is, I presume, Westminster voting intention, up 3. Conservative, 17%. Pretty much normal. Greens up 1 at 16%. Labour down 2 at 16%. The Lib Dems have done remarkably well to go down in a time when the Labour and Conservative parties are completely and utterly useless. The Lib Dems seemingly are also going down in popularity.
Well, they are. I think partially because the Lib Dems have been trying to tack into that space that now Zach and his Green wave have moved into. The Lib Dems have become actually quite scary left-wing in recent years. They've tacked not to the centre, but to the left. They're trying to outflank Starmer on the left. And now you've got the insurgency of the Greens that are taking up that space. And though Zach is a clown, he's not as much a clown as Ed Davey is. And he doesn't have the same, with the Horizon scandal and all the rest of it. Ed Davey has tainted goods. But right now, pretty much everybody in Westminster is tainted goods. You've got the official opposition who ran the place for 14 years into the ground, and pretty much anybody who was involved in that is tainted goods. And now you've got the Labour front benches who have been silent, have not acted. I mean, I describe the current cabinet as sort of Murder on the Orient Express. They go into the tunnel on the way to Brussels, probably not Venice. They go into the tunnel and they've all got their knives. They've all got their reasons to kill him, but none of them have the guts and the moral courage to do the first deed. Because as soon as one does, the rest will.
Right. But we're told that Shabana Mahmood and Yvette Cooper, two fairly senior members of the cabinet, whether you think they're any good or not, will be telling him this morning that he's got to go. That surely will create some kind of wave of positivity.
As soon as one of them does, the rest of them do. And then what? Because Labour rules don't just need 80 signatures. They need 80 signatures supporting an individual. So those who worship at the altar of the King of the North in Andy Burnham, they desperately don't want it to happen because he can't get back in time.
Yes.
And so they want to delay Starmer. They want this corpse. You know the Green Mile. It's the Green Mile and mile and mile and mile.
Yeah.
As the dead man walks.
Yes.
They want to keep him in as long as possible and allow Burnham to get what I think is commonly called a safe Labour seat in the Northwest, which after last week is about as rare as me wearing flip-flops.
Yeah, I mean, that's the trouble, isn't it? He hasn't got a safe seat anywhere. There's some talk of him being parachuted into the Scottish seat, which is coming open, I think, because one of the Scottish MPs is going into the... Yeah, there's Stephen Flynn, but there's also I think there's a Tory who's going into the Scottish Parliament as well. But I don't think the people of this country would buy that because they're not stupid.
No,
They've seen through that. Carpet bagging is a thing of the past.
By being King of the North, that's not over the Hadrian's Wall. I just can't see it.
No.
He has... Starmer effectively killed Burnham by barring him from the Gorton and Danton by-election.
Yeah.
And by doing that, Burnham he's a busted flush. Either he forces it, which would take courage, and I don't think he's got that sort of courage, and he gets somebody to stand down, and then he has to risk losing to either Reform or the Greens, or that's him done. And then you're left with Wes Streeting, who the Labour Party don't actually like.
No. I don't think anybody likes him.
Well, there's some people. Peter Mandelson does.
Mandelson likes him, which doesn't help him really, does it?
And then you've got Ed Miliband. I think the likelihood is we're going to have Ed Miliband who can effectively destroy our economy just that little bit faster.
Yes, he doesn't want to do it, of course. So almost certainly he will, if asked. Well, I don't want to serve but if I'm called to serve my country, obviously it's difficult to turn it down.
If my country asks me, it's like the pantomime of John Bercow being dragged unwillingly to the Speaker's chair.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. He was dragged even more unwillingly out of it, by the way, but that was another matter.
Well, that's also true.
The good news is that Downfall, the movie about Hitler in the bunker, has now been adapted for the Starmer situation in the local elections. So that usually means the end is very, very nigh. So that's well worth a watch. I've just retweeted that. And I've been asked to ask you if you are in your own garden. And if you are, can we have a look around it? Because it looks like a lovely part of the world that you're in. Yeah, there we go. That's lovely. Is that your own garden?
It's a place I rent. It's a friend's place.
Very nice. Very nice indeed. Yes, Wiltshire. I used to live in a place called Easterton in Wiltshire, near Devizes.
All right, this is Melksham. So
Melksham, I know it well, yeah. Very nice part of the world. Superb. One of Mandelson's houses is down there. You can probably rent that for you can probably rent that for a peppercorn rent nowadays.
Jeremy Corbyn partly grew up in Kington St Michael, which is just north of Chippenham.
Ah. Yes, that's right, because he grew up in a sort of semi-stately home, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, even though he was pretending to be a socialist. Yeah. A bit like Keir Starmer pretending to be working class yesterday, and he thinks if he tells people that he used to call his mum and dad, that somehow makes him working class, even though he bought them a field with some donkeys in it and went to a private school where he got a scholarship to play a musical instrument, which I believe was a flute. Make your own jokes.
At least it wasn't an oboe.
Anyway, listen, Gawain, good to see you. Hopefully the next time we talk, we might have a different leader. Who can say?
Who knows?
But we've been looking forward to that. Thank you very much indeed. Gawain Towler there from Reform, telling us what he thinks will happen. There's no doubt, is there, that the game is up. There's literally no question about that. The front pages, as I say, all say it's time to go. He's on the brink. He can't stay. The rebels are restless. Even the people who aren't rebels are restless. And there's simply no way that Keir Starmer survives, in my view, till the end of the week even. I'll have to have words with Emma Wolf to get my 10 quid back. If you looked up Dead Man Walking, there would be a picture of Starmer, and I really believe his father was a toolmaker. We see that every day, says Catherine on the Super Chat. Absolutely right. One from Leon. Starmer fans are like the women who write to serial killers in prison. That's good. I like that. Also, we have got, I wonder if we can watch it before the end of the show. I've just put it in the group, the Downfall thing, which is quite funny. Always a good sign that whoever it is that is the subject of it is on his way out. Also, shall we say, because people are saying that this is a good day to bury bad news for Zach Polanski and we shouldn't let him off the hook. He's apparently apologised about paying the wrong council tax on the houseboat. Do you remember this story that's been knocking around for a few days where he was claiming, despite the fact that he and his partner lived on a houseboat, that he only lived there part-time, right? He's now said that he actually failed to pay council tax while living on the narrowboat, and he apologised for unintentionally misleading people and making an unintentional mistake. But he's immediately taken steps to pay any council tax that he might owe. Well, I'm sorry. In my book, that would be something that you would be fined for and would possibly be a criminal offence. Misleading the taxman is not something that any of us would get away with. Can you imagine if you got the 25% council tax discount for living on your own and it turned out you were living with somebody else and you didn't pay it? That is, I think, a prosecutable criminal offence, isn't it? So why is Zach Polanski getting away with it? That's what I'd like to know. Also, the other big story that I want to talk about, which will come up a bit later on, it's not obviously a political story, although maybe it is. And it's the story that says that thousands and thousands of young people, children in fact, are being treated on the NHS for obesity. And hundreds of them are being given fat jabs, which is absolutely and utterly ridiculous, isn't it? Why would you give children fat jabs? You know, put them on a running machine or make them walk, do something, do some exercise. For heaven's sake, we shouldn't be giving children fat jabs, should we? It's 8:46. We've got much more to do. Sunil Sharma's coming up. Nick Freeman, the lawyer. Mr. Loophole is here. Laura Perrins will be talking to us. Next, though, Paul Burgess on climate change. Maybe we'll talk a bit more about the 100th birthday of David Attenborough, who, of course, is one of those climate change nutters that everybody thinks is actually talking complete and utter cobblers. Do we do news first? Bit of news with Edward Hughes.
I'm Edward Hughes. Following heavy Labour losses in last week's local, Scottish and Welsh elections, over 70 Labour MPs have publicly called for him to resign or set a departure timetable. Cabinet splits emerged, with some ministers urging an exit. In a make-or-break speech yesterday, firebomber target Starmer took responsibility for the results, vowed to prove doubters wrong, and pledged a reset, including closer EU ties to boost the economy and counter Reform UK. Other headlines: British Steel, Starmer announced plans to nationalise the Scunthorpe Works, which has been under temporary government control. Economy and travel: impacts from the Iran conflict continue, with falling Heathrow passenger numbers and a cooling jobs market. In short, it's a day of high political drama at Westminster amid ongoing global tensions. Please remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
Thank you very much indeed, Edward Hughes there with the news. Sorry?
He's looking well.
He is looking well, yeah. Somebody asked a question about him. Was it yesterday? Whether he's... no, it was a rude question, wasn't it? I think it was about pumping somebody. That's all right, I'm not going there. But we may come back to it. You never know. Right now, though, we're going to be talking to Paul Burgess, who's host of Climate Realism. Yeah, there we are. That's from Hamish Haggis McBobag, who is a friend of mine on Facebook, I think, because he got in touch the other day. I think I've got a feeling, Pooch, and I think I'm right in saying this, that he was the guy that made that 3D Mike Graham show sign. And he said he was very happy to see it not only here every day, but also at the live show, because we had it at the live show. The other thing that's amazing about all of the stuff we took to the live show is that it all came back.
Yeah, I had to go and get it.
You went and got it. Did you get all the merch, by the way?
Yeah, it's in my garage.
Because I've got a plan for you, which I was going to mention to you, but we'll do that later when we finish the show. Remind me when we finish the show. Paul Burgess is the host of Climate Realism. He's a retired chartered water resources engineer. He's an expert on net zero and industrial policy. It's nice to find somebody who is, because there's nobody in the bleeding government who seems to be an expert on it. He also wants to talk to us about the nationalisation of British Steel, which was announced yesterday by Keir Starmer. Paul, very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, very well indeed. Thank you for talking to us. But one of the reasons I'm well is that I'm hoping that at some point or other today, possibly, Keir Starmer will lay out his plan for departing Downing Street and putting us all out of our misery, if you wouldn't mind. I was rather puzzled by his announcement yesterday that he wanted to nationalise British Steel because, one, we thought he'd already done it, and two, he doesn't seem to want to actually make any steel.
Yeah, he basically, what he's done is rescue there's two types of steel, as most people know now.
Yes.
There's the low quality steel, which you can make in electric furnaces. But if you're going to make proper steel that engineers can use, you've got to make it in blast furnaces and make the high quality steel.
Yeah.
And we've got a shortage of that. We're about 1 million tons short at the moment. But the problem is, when I researched this, it's interesting because the problem is that the cost of energy is 3 to 4 times that of China, right? And you can't compete.
Yeah.
So even if you take it away, like they have at Port Talbot, onto huge amounts of money, I mean, huge amounts to make electric furnaces, that it's an impossible business because you're into a totally uncompetitive energy price.
Right.
But then I found a thing called a supercharger subsidy.
All right.
The full name is the British Industry Supercharger Subsidy. So this can come in and lower the price of electricity to the steel industry. And do you know who pays for that?
I
It
imagine that
goes
would be
on-
us, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it is, I'm afraid. It's the consumer. It goes on to the consumer.
I mean,
Electricity
unfortunately, Paul, that seems to be the answer to almost every question about energy, doesn't it? Let's have some green energy. Great. Unfortunately, we can't make any money doing it, so we'll have to give a subsidy to people. Who's going to pay that? We are. We
Correct.
pay for the windmills, we pay for the sustainable energy, we pay for the steel. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, but what we've got then is an industry that's crippled by energy prices. Having crippled it, and having put huge subsidies in, Port Talbot is huge subsidies with electric furnaces and everything. And then Scunthorpe now is costing a fortune, which is what they're talking about, British Steel and Scunthorpe. That's making the last place where we make proper steel, as it were. But we're going to be short today we have about 30% of our steel requirement made in Britain. That's all. So we're importing 70%. And we've crippled the industry. So it's a bit like you're having a race with athletes, and you come along and cut the back tendons off a few of them, the ones yours, and then you want to offer them a bandage and a help to run the race. It's impossible.
Right.
I mean, Miliband is absolutely bonkers, but he's not as bonkers. To give you an idea of how bonkers he is, this idea, for example, of burying that CO2 that's made, like in North Wales, they've got this project, and they announce 800 fantastic green jobs. The subsidy per year is over 800 million. So per job, including the tea lady, is over £1 million a year subsidy. And they bury 4.5 million tonnes a year of CO2. Sounds a lot. Do you know how long it takes the rest of the world to put that back? 39.5 hours.
Wow.
So we spend 800 million over that, a year's work, and it's all gone in 39.5 hours. How can you? Everyone's delusional.
Yeah.
I feel as if I'm in an Alice. I'm 81 now, and I've entered an Alice in Wonderland world.
Yeah. No, I feel like you do, exactly the same. I mean, I'm not quite that old, but I'm 65, and I wondered to myself, when I saw, for example, the stories this week about how if you've now got more than one wife, you'll get more benefits. You kind of go, sorry? Is this some kind of joke? But apparently not. Even though bigamy is actually illegal in this country, they're rewarding it from the Department of Work and Pensions. For some reason, it escapes me.
Do you know who controls our nuclear program? Do you know which department? Department of Work and Pensions.
Why?
Well, they had to put it somewhere, so they put it in the Department of Work and Pensions.
Is that where the budget comes from then as well?
Well, I don't know what control they have over it. Yes, I mean, they are the ministry that's in charge of our nuclear program, the Department of Work and Pensions. I mean, again, that's Alice in Wonderland, where everything's backwards. Everything's not what it seems.
No.
Yes?
No. Well, that's the world that we now seem to live in, Paul, isn't it? Listening and watching Keir Starmer's speech yesterday, I thought, well, he's clearly not working with a full deck here, because it seems that he doesn't know what's going on around him. He doesn't understand what the British people want. He doesn't seem to know the problems that Britain has got. And he's almost willfully ignoring them all.
Yes, he is. I mean, it's delusional. When I heard it, I just couldn't believe it, that, we're going to reset in the centre of Europe. We're going to things that, and then he employs, if you like, a pretty bad reputation old prime minister, not a great popular one, and employs a woman to help on women's matters that doesn't even define what a woman is.
Yeah.
You can't make this up, but it's part of the mad world. The trouble is, Graham, we've got 2 or 3 years of this.
Yeah, I know. Let's talk a bit about David Attenborough before I let you go, because you've got a history of talking a great deal of sense about the whole climate change nonsense. Attenborough, I find to be a ridiculous individual. He's been given this kind of lauded status as almost a godlike figure You know, he's reached the age of 100, which many people do. But why do you think it is that people are so enamoured with him? Because he's basically just an overblown TV presenter, isn't he, at the end of the day?
Yeah, he is. And you know, he seems to be a nice gentleman. And I think that his public persona as well is liked by the public, whether they like that or not.
Yeah.
I really, I was asked about this on GB News. And the point is, I lost complete respect for him with the walrus issue, where he did a program where all the walruses are coming off the cliff.
Right.
And when it was exposed that the polar bears were chasing them off the cliff, yeah? And that they were up on the cliff because all the islands with the walruses on, which are record numbers, there isn't enough room for all the walruses. So they come off the beach and round onto the cliff, and the polar bears think, well, why fight them? You know, I'll just chase them off the cliff. So they chase them off the cliff and eat them. And he wouldn't even apologize. Now, when it was pointed out to him, the whole thing was fake that he presented.
Yeah.
The fact he wouldn't apologize was the key for me.
Yeah.
And when he wouldn't apologize for that, well, that's it. He's then into this other world.
Yes.
And so I lost all respect for him at that point, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and I had a similar experience when it turned out that many of the pieces of footage that they've got were actually kind of not done where they said they were done. Some of them were done in studios. Some of them were done in, you know, set up situations. They weren't just, you know, the luck of the draw where you put a cameraman on a remote island and he lies there for 55 days and luckily he manages to pick up some incredible footage of some penguins. No, you know, it was all kind of stunted up. And the fact that he's also still working at the age of 100. I mean, I worry the BBC are going to send him on some trip and he's just going to, you know, not make it. You know?
Well, don't forget, these days he just does the commentary. He's basically a front man. All the rail work, and people like in Bristol, apparently, the wildlife people there, all the rail work's done by the experts in that.
Yes.
And the fantastic cinematography and so on. A lot of money thrown at it, but really, really good programs. But they get an extra boost if it's David Attenborough narrating it. So he's a narrator now. And that's fair enough. He's living off that. He doesn't give in. And I'm sure he's genuine. But he's a genuine fool is all I can say now. When you're presented with evidence that you've done something really wrong and you won't apologize and you'll carry on trying to influence children in particular.
Yes.
One of my big things is how we have brainwashed generations now. I mean, people in the 30s have been brainwashed all the time about climate change.
Yeah.
And in the last week, even the IPCC have now downgraded their forecast quite a lot.
Yeah.
They've basically said ignore all the high forecast, and they're gradually coming towards reality. It's incredible.
Well, the IPCC's forecasts have been ludicrous since the 80s. I mean, I remember reading one of their reports in 1989, which basically said that Canary Wharf would have been underwater up to about the 22nd floor by 2001. When I was working there, you know, in fact, you know, and it was definitely not any higher the river than it is now.
That's right. And also people mix up the difference. I cover 3 subjects. I cover climate change. I publish science papers. I also do the engineering. I'm an chartered environmental engineer, retired as well as water resources. And I also do economics. I combine them all together. But most of my life, actually, I've run my own business. And now I live in a world where the whole front bench have expertise. There's no doubt they have expertise, but the expertise is on spending other people's money, as Thatcher would put it. That they don't talk about creating wealth. They do things that damage their creation tremendously, but they're all experts on spending other people's money, and that's where all the political discussion is.
Yeah.
It's not about creating the wealth, and so you know this is, well, it's you know, Alice in Wonderland.
It is. Totally right. Paul, great to speak to you. Good to meet you as well. So we must have you on more, I think, to talk about these matters, because I'm sure there'll be times when we need to question government policy on all of those things that you just mentioned. Thank you very much indeed. Paul Burgess there, who is a welcome addition to the show. I've been asked to ask him about his amphibious boat, but I will do that next time. Getting a lot of love in the comments, not least from Richie and Rogue, who apparently say he's one of theirs. Shall we do, before we go off to Sunil Sharma, before we talk about the news again with Edward Hughes, should we have a look at the Starmer Hitler parody on the local election results? This is called Downfall. Oh dear, that's brilliant. That's Downfall, of course, 2004 movie, which keeps getting adapted for every single hapless individual who gets stuck in some kind of terrible situation. Starmer, I mean, He's got quite a resemblance to the guy playing the part there, actually. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Should we get some news or should we do... Sunil Sharma's here. Sunil, sorry about that. We just thought we should play that because we're now at the point of ridicule, are we not? I mean, Keir Starmer sitting in the bunker in Downing Street. You can imagine him in there being exactly that man, going, I didn't realise I was so unpopular. What am I going to do now? You know, it could be worse if I leave. I'm going to fight on. You know, what is he thinking?
I think that the parody there sums it really up. And what's probably scary is I don't think it is actually a parody in 10 Downing Street. Like you said, I think he probably is doing something very, very similar to that parody showing. I mean, yeah, it's an absolute disgrace, his tenure as British Prime Minister. I think in his credit, I think for him to do as bad as he's done and for him to destroy the parts of the country the way he has is crazy. I don't think anyone has been more detrimental to British politics in such a short space of time. It really is some achievement that he's been able to do that.
But he doesn't seem to realise, Sunil, what he's done, does he? I mean, he's almost deluded to the point of you know, sort of sectioning. If you know, somebody said, I think it was Dr. Helen Ingram on Twitter, who I don't know but who I follow, who's very funny, who said, you know, if you had an ex-boyfriend this deluded, you'd literally get a restraining order out against him because he's that mad. You know, he actually thinks he's done things which are good, which he hasn't. You know, they trot out this rubbish about breakfast clubs and, you know, we made the big decisions, we got the big decisions right. He said the economy was recovering. It's not. And they're now saying they're going to send the HMS Dragon into the Straits of Hormuz, which means we are now at war with Iran, which he keeps saying we're not, right?
Yeah. I can't think of anything that he's done positive for the UK. Economically, he's done a horrible job. He's done a horrible job on crime. He's done a horrible job on NHS. He's done a horrible... There is literally nothing remotely positive about what Keir Starmer has done.
No.
I was listening to your previous section with the previous guest where you were talking about climate change, and that's something that he's claims to be so passionate about. He's been on more than 40 trips in his short space as Prime Minister. He spent more than £4 million of British taxpayer money traveling around the world. On average, I think he's out of the country 1 every 8 days.
Yeah.
He has no interest in this country. He has no interest in its people. He has no interest in serving its best purpose. It's embarrassing. And the sooner he goes, the better. I think what worries me and scares me is I look at that cabinet and I think I think the previous person said that they have expertise. I'm yet to see any of those expertise. I think this is, in terms of cabinet, one of the most incompetent group of people we've ever seen. And you look across the world, and it's just Britain is just a laughing stock right now, and it should feel, you know, if he had any sense of pride or any sense of feeling, he would have resigned by now. He would have probably declared a general election, just said we've got it wrong, but instead. He's not going to do that. He's just going to keep clinging on, and the new person will come in. And I am actually really worried about what that next person does, because every person I see and I hear them speak, I don't see any hope of change or any sign of improvement coming up.
No, I mean, that is the depressing thing, because as a country, I mean, once we sort of get rid of the smoke and the mirrors and all the rest of it, and I said this last night, another day wasted, you know, a day of Starmer making his crappy speech at 10 o'clock in the morning, you know, various sort of allies trying to sort of back him and say that he's made a great speech, which everybody knew he hadn't. At the end of the day, then the rest of the day spent with various MPs having their say. I mean, nobody's running the country. There's no decisions being made. There's no business being done. You know, who the hell is in charge?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the one of the things he's trying to do now is last almost roll of the dice, where he talks about getting closer with the EU, European Union. It's embarrassing for him to make such a comment, considering the referendum results. But even just forget about the referendum, forget about the past, Remain, Leave. Look at the European Union right now. It's one of the worst performing continents in the world. It's pretty much most countries within the EU are in decline, because a lot of them have followed agendas, this sort of socialist agenda that a lot of Europe is doing. The European Union is becoming more and more like the Soviet Union, without the mass murdering, but there is elements of what's happened there that they are not a growing block of people. They're not moving forward. So the idea that now you're trying to align yourself with a block that is ultimately failing across the globe, it is working at such a slow rate in terms of its growth rate as a continent. So it's just desperate in terms of just a desperate attempt to still have some sort of, I don't know, try and stay in power, try to offer something. He's offered absolutely no hope. He's offered absolutely nothing to British people. And I think the sooner he's gone, the better. But again, like I say, that the concern is what happens next. Who will come in next? Will we get somebody? I mean, it sounds impossible, but will we get somebody even worse than Keir Starmer?
I think, yeah. I mean, the whole Labour project, I think, means that they're all literally as bad as one another. And I don't think any one of them has got a clue as to how to run the country, how to run the government, how to actually interpret what it is that the people said on the Thursday when they voted, because they don't know, and they're sort of diametrically opposed. I mean, there are some people still in the government and on the backbenches of Labour who want it to go further to the left, who want to soften their approach on the indefinite right to remain and all of that. They want to soften the approach on immigration. They want to soften the approach on welfare. They want to give away more money that we don't have to Ukraine. I mean, they just don't get it, do they?
No, they don't. And I think that's the concern in terms of, will they now go after almost the Green Party voters? I mean, the Green Party, one of the scary things of the local elections for me was the rise of the Greens. I mean, some of these policies are just outright crazy. I've not seen any of this sort of stuff be normalized, some of the things that they're saying. And I do worry that maybe at some point the next person will be trying to target those voters and try and get them back. So we may, as scary as this sounds, it may even go even further to the left, and it may even go further socialist, which is really concerning. And you've got to think, I'm guessing they won't call a general election anytime soon, regardless of what happens. How much damage are they going to do to the UK? And when it comes to, by the time of the general election, how long is it going to take for the country to recover? I think that's where, for me, I do feel a sense of sadness and anger towards this current government. It's so clear you don't have the answers. It's so clear that you're incapable of coming up with growth plans to grow the economy, to grow the country. So just let somebody else do it. If you have any sense of British pride, if you cared about your country, which they all claim to do, they would not be still there. They will still not be clinging onto their positions. It's not worked. They don't have the ideas. Get some help. And if you can't get help, then just resign and let somebody else do the job, or at least let the British people decide, because that local election result has been absolutely shocking for them. I don't think we've seen anything like this before. There's been lots of people who have been disliked, lots of prime ministers, lots of leaders being disliked, but I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. I don't know anyone that has anything remotely good to say about Keir Starmer. And I think that really sums it up.
No, nobody has anything good to say. Shabana Mahmood, just breaking here, is among those urging Keir Starmer to go, according to sources this morning. So it's absolutely incredible that he's now got Yvette Cooper, Shabana Mahmood, Darren Jones out this morning, not particularly defending him or telling us that he's going to come out fighting. And, 70-plus Labour MPs urged him to go. Several members of the cabinet team, or the government team, certainly, junior ministers, it's the end. I mean, it's like having a sort of a recalcitrant child in a pub, and you go, "We got to go home now," and they just refuse to leave. What do you do? In the end, you just pick them up and put them in the car.
I mean, something has to, sooner or later, you think the penny surely has to drop at some point within this party, within this group of people, for them to understand what's actually going on. And the delusion to keep going, the delusion to think that this is the right thing to do, or I don't know. I don't want to sound what's the word, going down a rabbit hole, but sometimes I look at some of the decisions Starmer makes and the Labour as a party have made, and sometimes I think it's almost deliberate to hurt the country. I don't understand any other reason why they're doing what they're doing, importing the amount of illegal people that they're importing to this country, the lack of care on migration, when everyone knows that's the biggest issue right now, of this, or probably this generation. This is going to be the big defining point, and he just doesn't seem to care about doing any of that or making any changes there. Neither does anyone within the cabinet. They don't seem to care about that, and it just almost feels like as if they want to hurt the country, like they don't care, and that there's something else going on. And I really don't want to go down that trail of thought, but I don't know how else do you justify some of the things that they've done in the last 18 months or so? How else do you explain some of the decisions that they've made?
No, I know. It's extraordinary. Sunil, good to talk to you. We've got to cut it there because we've got so much to do before we finish at 10 o'clock. Sunil Sharma there talking to us about how he doesn't get it either. I don't think anybody does. Nobody can imagine what on earth is going through Starmer's head. How does he really, really convince himself that actually it's a good idea to hang around? Nobody can understand that. We're going to talk to Nick Freeman coming up very shortly. Mr. Loophole wants to talk about the new EU regulations for taking pets across the channel to Europe. We'll get his view on that very, very shortly. First, a little bit of news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning. I'm Edward Hughes. Following heavy Labour losses in last week's local Scottish and Welsh elections, over 70 Labour MPs have publicly called for him to resign or set a departure timetable. Cabinet splits emerged, with some ministers urging an exit. In a make-or-break speech yesterday, Firebomber target Starmer took responsibility for the results, vowed to prove doubters wrong, and pledged a reset, including closer EU ties to boost the economy and counter Reform UK. Other headlines: British Steel, Starmer announced plans to nationalise the Scunthorpe Works, which has been under temporary government control. Economy and travel: impacts from the Iran conflict continue, with falling Heathrow passenger numbers and a cooling jobs market. In short, it's a day of high political drama at Westminster amid ongoing global tensions. Please remember to like and subscribe. Laters, Tigers.
Edward Hughes there with the news. Wearing a bit more makeup today, I would say. Apparently his missus helps him with that. She's a makeup artist. And, all's well that ends well in the old Edward Hughes household, it would seem. We shall keep you updated with that as we go. Some of you asking about the hype button to boost the YouTube channel. Yeah, we did used to have the hype button. We'll figure out what happened to it because I don't know, basically. But we will let you know. Because I remember I used to get it all the time at the beginning, and it's supposed to be good as long as you've got under 500,000 subscribers. But do like and subscribe to the channel, please, because it will help our algorithms. We had 18,500 watching at one point today, and over the last 3 days we've had over 100,000 per day watching this show, so we're very happy with that. Red Rock says, it's great Starmer will be gone, but I still want to know how he has amassed millions in wealth since entering number 10. Pooch, I have a great mock-up picture of Starmer. Where can I send it to you? We'll give you the address. There it is. The Mike Graham Show, PO Box 257, Battle, East Sussex, TN33 3FS. If you send it there, we will get it. And there's also saying, now, bumper stickers. We've got new bumper stickers, by the way. So we'll organise for people to send to buy those actually, because we're going to have an online shop. Sorry?
I'm creating a little merch store to get rid of stuff in my garage.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, well, I was going to say we can handle it through that post office address if you want, but we can talk about this later. We don't need to do it now. Let's talk to Nick Freeman, Mr. Loophole, who's here with us, frequent traveller to the European continent and France in particular. Nick, very good morning to you. Welcome.
Morning, mate.
Good to see you. This is annoying, isn't it, this business? Because, I mean, we all have, those of us who have pets and we occasionally want to go over to France or Spain or somewhere, the EU's changed the rules again. What have they done? Tell us.
Well, before Brexit, you just, had your animal and you could leave the shores and it wasn't a problem.
Right.
What they introduced was animal health certificates. So you used to go and have to see a vet, and the vet would do some fundamental tests and checks on your dog to make sure, for example, it hadn't got rabies, obviously had to be chipped. It cost about £250. The vets hated it because it was such a time-consuming job, ridiculous papers for it. In any event, the way around it, if you like, the loophole was to get a passport for your dog. So what I did with my dog, I travel frequently to France. I got him a French passport. He had his rabies jab in France, and it was fine. So all you needed to do was when you got to Folkestone was you went to the centre, They looked at the passport and off you went.
Right.
What's just happened is on the 22nd of April, a few days ago, or a few weeks ago now, they introduced very quietly, to the extent that the vets here didn't know, they were given 4 days notice, the vets in France didn't know, and they said, actually, forget about passports, they're now redundant. We're going back to the animal health certificates. So what happens is, and I went yesterday, the vet has to fill in copious amounts of paper.
Right.
They hate doing it. The animals, obviously, a lot of animals are very stressed going to the vets. Everything they put on the paper is in the pet passport. So basically, you have a passport that's relevant, that's up to date, completely fine. But what they're saying is, no, that's now impotent, it's redundant. What we want is, we want to fill in all this paperwork, which basically replicates what's already in a valid document.
Right.
So apart from the complete waste of time, you now have the extra expense, you have the stress caused to the dog, the stress caused to the vets, who, if you have a dog like mine,
Presumably as well, right?
And it just is a huge waste of time and money. And this is probably why we've left, one of the reasons why we've left. You know, we're talking about policies today, politics. Things make no sense. And I said to the vet, I'm very, very angry about it, as I know a lot of people are, because you're trying to understand, why have you done this? What is the benefit? How does it assist or help anyone? And no one can give you an answer. So what you're doing is you're paying money for something you already have. You're causing massive inconvenience for everyone. There's going to be a time delay. You're causing animal stress. And for what reason? Well, I've got a simple passport and it works. And they've done it quietly. And they've just, 4 days before it was implemented on the 22nd of April, the vets in this country were told. And the vets in France, they didn't know. I actually told them, I got them the law and said, listen, next time I come, forget my passport, you're going to have paperwork. So sadly, that's where we are. I'm just hoping at some stage, bearing in mind we're getting closer and closer back to a reunion. We're diluting Brexit day by day. I think that's Starmer's ambition, and he's probably wanting to work hard at that while he still remains in office. And we might get back to some sensibility.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering, knowing Starmer as we do, whether he's kind of encouraging this kind of activity so that he can say, oh, look, if we get back to closer relations with the European Union, all of those things that they've made more difficult, like e-gates and, arriving at airports and being made to queue up for longer, taking your pets becoming more of a problem, we can fix all that. All you've got to do is agree to sign up to the new sort of, single market.
For a much poorer deal. I mean, interestingly enough, you talk about airports. Greece, I think, said yesterday, we're not requiring British people to queue. We're knocking that on the head with these new, identity checks. It just doesn't work. It causes, huge delays, aggravation for everyone. There's no beneficiary of the system. There's just that feeling of issue. And I think several countries now have said we're not going to comply with it. I know we're actually not going to comply with it.
And is it possible that there are some places perhaps that won't comply with this pets change as well? Because Pooch, who sits here with me every morning, goes to France quite a lot too, and he said he went last weekend and there was none of that being asked for. I'm
going tomorrow, and I'm going to see what happens. Am I going tomorrow? No, I'm not going. Yes, I'm going tomorrow. Sorry, I'm going tomorrow.
It's easy to get confused these days. But what about coming back? Because the last time I went to France, which was probably, 2 or 3 years ago, we also had to get a vet in France before we could bring the dog back to the UK. So presumably that's all still going on as well.
That still goes on. But now what they normally do is they look at your passport. But what I'm saying, your passport is invalid. They've got all this paperwork, so I've got a load of paperwork for them to fill in, and they're going to stamp what they would normally put in the passport. But I'm suspicious, because I think if your dog has had a rabies jab in an EU country, that they're going to understand when you get to the port and say, well, you just use your passport. But you can't take the chance, because you get there and I had a situation not long ago where I had a passport and I had a certificate saying, an animal health certificate saying I had the rabies jab, but it wasn't stamped on the passport and they wouldn't let me through. I had to go to Ashford to find a vet so that he could actually stamp the passport with what was on the animal health certificate. So again, it just, there's no common sense, Mike. It's with most aspects of British life now. Things just think that's
Yeah,
a huge.
and presumably the other risk you've got is that if you did have to come back because you couldn't delay your particular trip, you'd have to leave the animal there, right?
Well, you would. You've got a more generous window now. You've got between. You can't leave. You have to see a vet, and then you've got to wait at least 24 hours, and 20 hours. So it's basically 1 day to 5 days. So there's quite a large window to get things sorted out. But what you don't want is to get to the port either in Calais or Folkestone and find out actually there's a defect with the paperwork and
Right.
it happens, and then you've got to go and find a vet and sort it out. And
Yeah.
that's.
Yeah, because it just sounds overcomplicated, doesn't it? As you say, I mean, you might not need it, you might get away with it, but you can't take the chance.
You definitely can't take it. And that we're being treated as if we're a third world country. And I know people. Yes, well, our roads are third world, our health is third world, our police are third world, our defence is third world. But putting that on one side, we don't have a rabies problem here, and all animals who travel have a rabies jab, and it's marked, and they have their number on their passport. So we're just doing unnecessary duplication for the sake of it at a huge for everyone, and there's no one benefits. There's no point.
No, it really is ridiculous. I see that you're also talking again about bikes and e-bikes. Just before we let you go, you put out a tweet just the other day about a solution to the law problem that you have with e-bikes. We tried to get a petition going, didn't we? And we were told by Parliament that, oh, we've already got one of those, so we're not going to bother with yours. But I don't see them debating it anytime soon.
I think they've got bigger fish to fry, haven't they? I mean, the country at the moment isn't obsessed with e-bikes. They're obsessed with their own careers, aren't they? Look, you and I have said for a long time, all we need is we need to have the same law that applies to cars, motorcycles, etc., for bicycles, for e-scooters and e-bikes, and then everyone's accountable. They're traceable. They're responsible. They've got insurance in place. The appropriate people have helmets, etc. But I think at the moment, interesting enough about Starmer, and I've obviously been listening to your show this morning, as I do every morning. He's got a trump card, hasn't he? And I'm listening to your contributors, and they're obviously providing a lot of great common sense. But I think he's got a rhinoceros hide, Starmer. And I think if push comes to shove, he's shoved very hard at the moment. I think he'll say, listen, guys, you push me a little bit harder and I'm going to call a general election.
Yeah.
I think he'll adopt that kamikaze course. And then everyone would know we're out of work. We're going to lose our jobs.
Yeah.
That's it. And then the country would, of course, be in turmoil because I don't actually believe anyone's ready to take place. It will be catastrophic for the country, but that his continued rule is equally catastrophic.
Exactly. And there should there not, some kind of mechanism by which a trigger could be pulled of some kind, where you say, all right, we've just had a big result in a local election. There's been a massive vote of no confidence in the current government. Even his own players are playing the game and saying that he should go. He won't go. Surely there should be some way, some form of democracy, which then kind of starts a process.
I agree with you that there should be, but of course they're all playing for their own careers, aren't they? It's all plotting, it's planning. There's nothing that's happening that's concerned with the good of the country. What they're concerned with, I mean, he holds a trump card, doesn't he? He'll say, listen, I listened to you, I'm calling an election. Because my view, and I know this probably won't go down well with your listeners, is that he actually is the best thing that can happen for this country. And I know he's inept, I know he's incompetent, I know he's clueless, and I acknowledge all those things. But the idea of having someone like Ed Miliband and Angela Rayner in positions of power would do even more damage. And we're better having damage limitation than complete and utter nuclear fallout. And I do fear that the alternative is going to be much, much worse than what we currently have. We need to be very careful what we wish for. And I have never hated a prime minister. It stresses me as to the extent that I cannot stand the frustration that you watch him, you listen to him. I mean, we have a politician, we seem to have politics now where all he wants to do is put labels. He identifies the problem, puts a label on the problem, and he's got no cure. He's got no vision. He's got no plan. He doesn't know how. And none of them do. And it's very easy to say, well, we've got a problem here, they've got that wrong, they've done this wrong. What is the solution? And as a lawyer and as a businessman, and you have so many business people around, you need a solution. What are we trying to achieve? How are we going to do it? We know what the problems are. We don't need him to tell us what the problems are. What we want is, how are we going to have a solution that works for everyone? You know, if you've got an economy that's creeping into recession, what do you need to do? You need to stimulate it. You don't need to keep increasing taxes. You don't need to increase the minimum wage. You don't need to increase NIC and make it too expensive for people to employ people. You need to remove or reduce stamp duty. Get things going. Why can't they see it? The reason they can't see it is because none of them have ever run their own business. I think something like 5% of the current Labour MPs have ever actually had a proper job. That means 95% haven't. So if they haven't done that, what chance have they got of running this country? And this is why we are where we are.
Yeah,
so
exactly right. Exactly right. Listen, great to see you, Nick. Thanks very much indeed. Nick Freeman there talking to us about the situation if you're travelling to Europe. We'd love to hear from all of you, by the way, if you've been going as well. Pooch says that he got no problems going last weekend. It may well be that it's the luck of the draw. Who knows? We're going to be moving over to UK Live very shortly. We've already put out a link to that, but just before we do that, Proctor has sent a super chat in which he says 81 has now been reached. Get that bottle cracked open, Mike. 81, of course, being the magic number to trigger a leadership election inside the Labour government. So I don't see that being reported anywhere yet, but that's what we're being told. We'll check that out, of course, and bring it with you. Also, 9:30 is the witching hour, supposedly. The cabinet showdown is about to start inside of 10 Downing Street. So we will get, information on that throughout the course of the day. I didn't do an additional video yesterday because there wasn't really much happening. So if there is something happening this afternoon, I will do one, definitely, to keep you updated on what we are about to say and what we are about to think about what is going on. Right now, though, 5.4 thousand likes, which is good. Keep those likes coming, please, and do sign up and subscribe to the channel because it does help us massively. You can actually become a member of the YouTube channel, which means that you'll get it ad-free when the show goes out every single morning. But right now, let us fix ourselves and go over to UK Live, where I think we are ready to go. I've just clicked on it.